Unexpectedly, he managed to find them, and all at once, there were 7, precisely the number he needed. However, the price these 7 demanded was exorbitant. 50 million each, totaling 350 million for all 7. He wasn't lacking in funds. Rather, he was afraid of arousing suspicion by revealing too much. Your Highness, not at ease? Seeing Xiameng Guanyu remaining silent, the Tier 4 Emperor in golden attire asked with confusion. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and spoke. No, it's just that the price is too high. I am only a prince. If I were to produce so many godstones, it would undoubtedly invite trouble. Your Highness, rest assured, I understand this, and I will keep it confidential. They won't leak any information. Seeing the other party's solemn assurance, Jian Wushuang directly took out a mustard seed, placed it on the table and said, Here are 50 million godstones. You can take it over now as a sign of my sincerity. When they arrive, I will give another 100 million, and before the expedition, I will settle the remaining godstones. No problem. The Emperor in golden attire revealed a smile. A hint of killing intent flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. This time he was treated like a fat sheep. They just raised their price out of the blue. 35 million, they really dared to ask for it. Let's see if they have the fate to spend it. The strength of these casual cultivators was mediocre, yet their asking price was outrageously high. Night fell. The 7 Tier 4 emperors arrived at the military camp. After Xiameng Guanyu entertained them and left 100 million godstones to them, they hastily departed. A confidential decree came from the palace. On this very day, the Great Xia dynasty officially declared war on the Mo Luo kingdom. On the day of the declaration of war, General Gudong, leading 1 million troops, flattened a city in the Mo Luo kingdom. On the imperial border were 4 battlefield cities. 3 of these cities were guarded by 3 generals, and 1 was under the command of the empire's first marshal. However, currently only General Gudong was present. Today, the emperor summoned the crown prince and some influential courtiers, probably for this matter. Upon entering the Qianyang Gate, it was already bustling with activity. Here, Jian Wushuang also saw the immensely powerful second prince. Marquis Xiameng. Jian Wushuang recognized the person's face. He was a chubby man, and his understanding of him from memory was limited. Now seeing him in person and sensing the aura around him, it was extraordinary. The 2 guards by his side were both Tier 4 emperors, displaying a more extravagant lineup than even the crown prince. The crown prince had only 1 Tier 4 emperor by his side. The Tier 4 emperors by their side were figures willing to lay down their lives for them. In contrast, Jian Wushuang's side seemed a bit lacking in significance, clearly recruited through financial means. Moreover, both the crown prince and the second prince held military power. That Marquis Xiameng has already reached the Tier 4 emperor level, and he harbors a peculiar power within him, not weaker than the peak of the Tier 4. Bai Junwang's voice echoed in his mind. Jian Wushuang felt a stir in his heart. Peak of the Tier 4? This was much stronger than the crown prince. At least he wouldn't need to exert full force to defeat the crown prince. But the second prince, he was not a match. This person was so powerful that he was probably the counterpart to the Mo Luo's eldest prince on the battlefield. At that time, the princes of Great Xia would become the laughingstock. No wonder the crown prince had vehemently opposed going to war in the first place. There was this underlying connection. Seeing the other party from a distance, Xiameng Guanyu's face lit up, revealing a warm smile. Second brother, wait for me. The chubby second prince heard Jian Wushuang's shout, turned unexpectedly, and smiled. Ninth brother. The 2 entered the depths of the imperial palace together, leaving the guards outside naturally. In the main hall of the Positive Yang Palace, it was the first time for Jian Wushuang to see the emperor. Xiameng Yunxing, this figure, comparable to the ancestor of the Xiameng clan, was indeed extraordinary. From him, Jian Wushuang saw the shadow of Elder Zhujian. After everyone took their seats, Jian Wushuang dared to look carefully. The hall was now almost full with dozens of Tier 5 emperors, not to mention Tier 4 emperors. The other 2 generals among the 3 great generals had also arrived, both peak Tier 5 forces, similar to Shenyuan Dapan. Of course, Shenyuan Dapan was also there, along with several sons. Finally, an hour later, after Xia Mang Yunxing, the commander-in-chief of Great Xia's Xia Mang Yunzhan, took his seat. Everyone was present. Jian Wushuang not only secretly assessed Xia Mang Yunxing but also learned that he not only commanded the great army of cultivators in Great Xia but was also the current imperial emperor's brother. The two brothers were both peak tier 5 emperors. However, Xia Mang Yunxing became famous much earlier than the current emperor. Swish! With everyone present, they stood up, bowing respectfully regardless of who they were. Pay respects to your majesty. Xia Mang Yunxing sat on the throne, pressed his hand, and his gaze was extremely imposing. Beside the throne, there were several grandmaster chairs, with several old eunuchs sitting above. On the left and right sides of Xia Mang Yunxing, 2 people stood, and everyone bowed respectfully. But these 2 individuals remained unmoved. One was the royal teacher, Wuliang Buddha. The other, a eunuch in a red robe embroidered with bold patterns, had a head full of white hair and a face unnaturally pale. When Jian Wushuang stood up straight and glanced at him, he felt a sense of unease deep in his heart. In this grand hall, this person's strength was probably the strongest. Jian Wushuang didn't even dare to actively inquire of Bai Junwang, fearing that the other might see through his disguise. Don't worry, that red-robed old eunuch is indeed at the tier 6, but he has flaws. His strength is quite ordinary, much weaker than the Lai who I killed in the past. At my peak, I could have killed him with a breath. Bai Junwang spoke casually, treating a tier 6 emperor as if he were just an insect. Jian Wushuang, however, secretly transmitted his voice. Old man, if you come out now and blow him away, do I still need to be afraid? Humph. You don't believe me? Bai Junwang clenched his fist, speaking coldly. Wait until I regain my strength, and watch how I slaughter the Great Xia. If he truly regained his strength, slaughtering the Great Xia would be a trivial matter. With Bai Junwang's unparalleled strength, not only the ancient kingdom of Great Xia, but the entire Tiannan would lack a worthy opponent. The only question was when he could fully recover his strength. This time, if I can refine the origin source, it's already good. Afterward, the divine spirits granted me a divine body and flesh, but one still need to integrate the power of all things into Bai Junwang. That process won't be completed in less than 1,000 years, Bai Junwang explained. Stop talking. Thinking about those troublesome matters, Jian Wushuang felt a headache. He didn't want to listen to Bai Junwang boasting. Xia Mang Yunxing slowly stood up, looked at everyone, and spoke with a voice like a bell, majestic. The demonic path is rampant, and the chaos in the Tiannan is enough. The northern border of the Great Xia cannot become another chaotic region. Everyone listened carefully. Summoning you all today is for the matter of expedition. Share your thoughts. Xia Mang Yunxing said these words and then left the grand hall with the royal teacher and the red-robed eunuch. He was the decision-maker, not the strategist. After the people in the hall discussed a strategy, he would come back and make the final decision. This was how imperial emperors acted. If defeated, kill the strategists. If victorious, take credit as the decision-maker. Everyone was intelligent. Who wouldn't see through this? Therefore, careful consideration was necessary when devising a plan. The expedition to the Mo Luo nation might have been strategized thousands of years ago, with someone already well prepared. All that remained now was to articulate the plan. On the elevated throne, the indifferent Tier 5 emperor showed no interest, leaving the representation to Tier 4 emperors. Among the Xiamang clan, there were not many strong individuals and even fewer qualified to speak. The discussions were mainly conducted by influential courtiers. The deliberations lasted for 3 days, resulting in the selection of 2 proposals. One was put forth by the second prince and was to be presented by the Duke's mansion. The other proposal came from a current high-ranking official, a peak Tier 5 power with numerous followers holding sway over the court. The crown prince watched with a glint of coldness in his eyes. It was disheartening to see a prince meddling in matters of external warfare. His aura as the crown prince was truly lacking. Fortunately, he currently advocated for peace. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to face anyone. Given the current situation, it was likely that the strategy proposed by the second prince would be adopted. A eunuch sitting in the grand teacher's chair delivered the two strategies to a side hall, awaiting Xia Mang's decision. The hall fell into silence. Jian Wushuang showed no interest in the proceedings. He knew the crown prince would surely obstruct the decision later. The affairs of the royal family were just as they were, with nothing worth scrutinizing. Those seated here were sly old foxes who had lived for countless years. They could easily discern the current situation. The main purpose of this expedition was to weaken the power of the imperial courtiers. If they won, the courtiers would become even more audacious, but at the same time, Great Xia would become stronger. If need be, they could trim their influence again. As long as the ancestor was around, Great Xia would remain stable, though difficult to manage. If they lost, it wouldn't matter. It would serve as paving the way for the crown prince. Despite the second prince's current arrogance, if he lost, he would become a fallen dog, everyone condemning him. On the other hand, the crown prince, having shown benevolence and justice, would be better at controlling these courtiers. This is like nurturing goo worms. But ultimately, strength speaks. This struggle is not just about power. It's about resources. With resources, one becomes increasingly powerful. That's why the Immortal dynasty still adopts the methods of mortal dynasties. Before long, a message was sent out from inside, instructing the Xia Mang clan to stay for the family feast, while the others could leave. The faces of those powerful ministers remained unchanged, but in their hearts, they cursed silently. The world within a family is like this. All decisions have nothing to do with outsiders like them. Inside the hall, there were many strong members of the Xia Mang clan. Those of higher seniority usually didn't participate in court affairs. They followed the ancestors in the ancestral temple. Nowadays, in both court and the common people, most of the powerful individuals are relatively young. Among them were 4 Tier 5 emperors and dozens of Tier 4 emperors. Almost all were emperors except for Jian Wushuang. Following these people into a side hall, a long table was already prepared, adorned with exotic flowers and fruits of considerable value. Everyone took their seats. Jian Wushuang sat at the end, with Xia Mang Yunjian next to the main seat, along with the Tier 5 emperor who presided over the beast fight arena. After a while, Xia Mang Yunxing came over with 2 jade slips, casually throwing them onto the table. In a calm tone, he said, "Second son, judging by your expression, are you planning to go all out against the Mo Luo clan?" "Father, this battle is the foundation, a decisive battle. It will be a national war, a rare encounter in countless epochs." The second prince, Xia Mang Guanjuan, stood up, his voice resounding. Seeing the opportune moment, the crown prince stood up in opposition. "This may not be the case. How many times has our great Xia engaged in a national war? We don't even have a budget for the costs involved. How can we fight the demon clan?" Makes sense. What do you think, second prince?" Xia Mang Yunxing sat upright in the main seat, then turned to the second prince. The second prince knew that this battle was inevitable, and now it was up to him to provide a decent reason. If he could articulate it, it would prove that the emperor had given him a fair chance at competitive decision-making. At this moment, he couldn't afford to panic. After some contemplation, he calmly said, "Budget? The decisive battle is about determining the trend. Our great Xia has been accumulating strength for millions of years, while the Mo Luo has only risen in the past few years. It used to be a small sect, but it has expanded too rapidly in recent years. If we don't eradicate it now, we may not have another chance in the future. Younger brother says it's just a small threat. With our ancestor overseeing, are we afraid of a demonic sect? In the southern borders, amidst the chaotic domains, we have guarded for millions of years. If a national war breaks out now, what if the chaotic domains attack the southern borders?" The crown prince spoke confidently, evidently well prepared. Jian Wushuang sat at the back, eating and drinking without even looking at them. At some point, Xia Mang Yunxing noticed his youngest son, Xia Mang Guanyu. He waved his sleeve, interrupting the debate between the crown prince and the second prince, and asked, "Guan Yu, any opinions on this expedition?" Clatter. Suddenly hearing this question, Jian Wushuang accidentally knocked over his cup on the table. He quickly stood up and said, "Everything depends on Imperial Father's decision." Ha ha! Xiamang Yunxing was pleased with this response, seemingly beyond his expectations. "Good. I see no difference between you and those outside. You only know petty schemes and ignore the big picture. In Guan Yu's words, you should really think carefully about it with the second prince." Xiamang Yunxing glanced at the crown prince and the prince, his voice somewhat cold. No matter how many calculations were made, they would never figure out what the emperor was really thinking. In fact, it was simple. Strength is paramount. With the ancestor present, the fate of the great Xia is secure. The Tao is supremely simple. Xiamang Yunxing's thoughts were straightforward, just like what Xiamang Guanyu had said. Everything depended on the imperial emperor's decision. National warfare. It wasn't up to the prince and the second prince to decide. It was a matter to be consulted with the ancestor. People from the same side were present. Saying a few words would be enough. Saying too much would make it awkward and hinder their ability to weaken others when their own people were in conflict. Uncles, imperial brothers, the matter of the expedition has been decided. It will be announced to the world shortly. The royal teacher has also given a date, and all departments are ready. In the first year of the new calendar's fourth era, the day of the expedition will arrive. Xiamang Yunxing's face showed some weariness, and after leaving these words, he departed. Only the somewhat stunned crown prince remained, while the second prince smiled faintly. After Xiamang Yunxing left, the other members of the Xiamang family were not polite. They chatted casually and enjoyed the food and wine on the table. It didn't look at all like preparations for an imminent expedition. The crown prince stood there, feeling like he was being played. Everyone seemed indifferent. He took things too seriously. There were no outsiders here, why be so harsh? Anyway, when the time came, his own people would help spread the news, saying a few words would be enough, no need to take it seriously. Jian Wushuang was also amused by the crown prince. This person was fit to be a crown prince for a lifetime. When he became the emperor, the country would probably be in danger. After a brief sweep, Jian Wushuang bid farewell to the elders at the table and left. The following days were tumultuous, but all of this had nothing to do with him. The final decision on the two strategies was based on the opinion of a first-rank official. The proposal for a national war came from the second prince of the Duke's mansion, but it was too radical and unsuitable. There was no need to consult the ancestors. Xiamang Yunxing immediately vetoed the idea. As the crown prince mentioned, if the national war were to drag on and the southern domain suddenly attacked, what would they do? Although the Mo Luo nation was strong, its strength was mainly superficial, and its foundation was lacking. A national war was unnecessary. They could defeat the enemy without it. With just 4 cities, a steady advance and slow erosion would be enough to entangle the Mo Luo nation. However, even so, the expenses of this campaign were staggering. Even a Tier 6 emperor couldn't bear the burden, and only an ancient kingdom like Great Xia had the courage for such an endeavor. Military preparations and resource mobilization would take several years and couldn't be accomplished overnight. Jian Wushuang's 10,000-strong army was inconspicuous in the Northern Army camp. Having spent decades in the military camp, constantly cooperating with these people, although the Luoho formation hadn't been mastered yet, preparations had to be made. Otherwise, there wouldn't be time to practice when the need arose. The 7 newly recruited Tier 4 emperors, known as the 7 Wonders of Maishan percent, had average strength, but they were knowledgeable in various unconventional methods. Among them was a snake-scorpion clan woman, exceptionally skilled in assassination and naturally charming. She had already had intimate relations with many emperors in the camp, causing Jian Wushuang a considerable headache. At the end of the 3rd era of the new calendar, a decade before the expedition, the auction proceeded as scheduled at the Ying Tower in the eastern city. On this day, it could be said that myriad immortals gathered. Tier 5 emperors, usually rare one after another, made the Tier 4 emperors inconspicuous among them. Princes like Xiameng Guanyu were even more inconspicuous. Look, the imperial emperor of Great Xia. Many powerhouses followed the sound and looked. Great Xia Emperor, Xiameng Yunqing, came dressed in a black dragon robe, accompanied by Shenyuan Anshui. In the heavens, Tier 5 emperors personally welcomed him and, with the standard of a Tier 6 emperor, escorted the Great Xia Imperial Emperor into the Ying Tower. After a brief pause, Jian Wushuang also entered. Since he had put up the boundless ice corpse for auction here, there was no need to verify assets. He walked directly through the VIP channel. In just these few days, his overt expenses exceeded 300 million godstones. The heavens controlled everything, and information was a significant feature. How could they not know how many godstones the 9th prince had? 8 billion godstones. Jian Wushuang carried a precious item and entered the Ying Tower. This Ying Tower was, in fact, an eternal treasure, a treasure of the heavens, forming its own world inside. Ordinary cultivators could only sit on the throne in the hall, while VIPs had individual rooms. And the treasures Jian Wushuang had put up for auction here were very rare, qualifying him to sit here. Those who could sit here were either Tier 5 emperors or Tier 4 emperors with great fortunes, each with a net worth of over 10 billion. Entering the room, the interior was somewhat similar to the Firefox Palace. Before him were huge gauze windows, clearly revealing everything happening in the outer hall, while the outside couldn't see what was happening inside. Sitting on the white jade-carved throne, Jian Wushuang curiously looked toward the hall. Now, there were already millions of people in the hall. The weakest were a few Dao lords, probably those who came with their elders. Among the emperors, the weakest were at the peak of the Tier 3. Some covered their faces, making it impossible to see their expressions, while others revealed their faces, but most of them were not their true appearances. The auction began soon after. A gracefully elegant and supremely slender beauty stepped onto the central stage of the auction hall. This seemingly alluring beauty was, in fact, a genuine Tier 6 emperor, surpassing the eunuch in the imperial palace by several grades and even outclassing the ancestral figure of the Great Xia among the Tier 6 emperors, already reaching the level of the Xianxia's supreme ancestor. Ladies and gentlemen, coming from afar, on behalf of the heavenly court, I express our gratitude for your presence. The beautiful woman bowed slightly after speaking. This scene surprised many in the hall. A Tier 6 emperor. She actually bowed to them, the Tier 3 emperors. This was also the reason why the heavenly court could become a peak force, not arrogant or rash. Alright, now the auction officially begins. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Nalan Ci. Nalan Ci. Bai Junwang muttered to himself. Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows slightly, asking in confusion, "What's wrong? Do you know her?" Don't know this little girl. But I know the ancestor of the Nalan family, Bai Junwang asserted confidently. The Nalan family? This was the first time Jian Wushuang had heard of it. Curious, he asked, "Are you so sure she is from the Nalan family as you claim?" Hee. Quite charming. All the women of the Nalan family look the same. How could I not recognize them? Back then, I had some dealings with the ancestor of the Nalan family. Here, Bai Junwang wore a somewhat nostalgic expression. Jian Wushuang shook his head, paying no attention to the other party, and focused on the auction hall. The first treasure appeared. Exclusive to the Tiannan, rhinoceros horn wood. Its fragrance can make people seek enlightenment in their dreams. Starting price, 5 million godstones. Nalan Ci held the treasure in one hand while scanning the audience with the other. The sensing power of the Tier 6 emperor was terrifying. Each bid was clearly confirmed. 6 million. 6,500,000. 7 million. In the hall, a white-haired old man, a hint of amusement in his eyes, raised the token and said in a low voice, 10 million. 10 million? No need to continue. Many chose to give up. This treasure was somewhat redundant for Tier 4 emperors and too extravagant for Tier 3 emperors. Offering 10 million was already a high price. Soon, the first item was sold in just a few breaths. There were about 100,000 items for auction this time, and at this rate, it would take years to finish selling them all. The first few items were all within the 10 million range. gradually increasing as the auction progressed, with starting bids exceeding 10 million. The blue fire boundary stone, capable of activating the origin source of the fire space within, starting bid 150 million, a treasure related to the origin of the space. Jian Wushuang immediately became interested. This time, he not only needed treasures of various kinds to enhance his extreme Dao, but he also needed to improve the origin of the space. For future paving, the origin of the space was closely related to his current strongest field, the one-thought universe. The stronger the space, the more powerful the one-thought universe. In the one-thought universe, he had crossed tiers multiple times, relying on suppressing his opponents within it to enhance his own combat power. Even after merging with the power of devouring, he found that when suppressing opponents, he could devour the lost combat power of the opponent, making him even more formidable than before. This was his strongest trump card. When the one-thought universe emerged, his combat power increased by more than 10 times. Much stronger than a supreme treasure. 20 million. In the VIP room there was no token, but there was a jade slip on the armrest of the throne. Just tapping it would display his bid. He directly added 5 million. The sound continued to emanate from the VIP room upstairs, instantly robbing the onlookers below of their confidence. Among the millions present, there were still quite a few wealthy individuals, and soon someone dared to continue bidding. Jian Wushuang promptly raised the stakes by another 5 million. This suffocating bidding war quickly deterred others from competing. In the end, the green fire boundary stone was secured for a price of 40 million. Soon, someone delivered the treasure. Holding it in his hand, Jian Wushuang played with it for a while, and flames surged in the palm of his hand, creating a mysterious spectacle. The origin of this green fire boundary stone was somewhat similar to the space any once encountered in the green fire boundary. However, this small piece of green fire boundary stone, just about the size of his palm, exceeded the entire green fire boundary countless times over. It was already comparable to an Emperor's Tier 4 fire origin space. At 40 million, the purchase was not too unfavorable. Although it was relatively rare, it was still available in the outside world, with a maximum price of 35 million. His bid of 40 million was purely for the sake of making a splash. He couldn't afford to let go of the first item so easily, and he needed to be a bit ruthless. The first 20 items were quickly auctioned. All of them were treasures related to the origin, constituting a certain category. Only when it came to treasures related to the universe and all things, Jian Wushuang found many of them unappealing and chose not to make a move. The subsequent auction items were treasures of divine bodies. Among the strong individuals in the hall, few followed the path of divine bodies. However, most of the powerful figures seated in the VIP room had indeed chosen the path of divine bodies. The origin source was too challenging for them, and the divine body, though crude and straightforward, proved to be a shortcut. However, the cost of this shortcut was excessively high. It was not something an ordinary person could cultivate. The skeletal frame of the purple pupil bull demon king, capable of maximizing the advancement from 10,000-fold to 13,000-fold, starting bid at 30 million godstones. Since merging with the boundless divine body, Jian Wushuang's body had already reached 10,000-fold. However, further advancement became increasingly difficult, requiring numerous treasures for a breakthrough. The skeletal frame of this gigantic purple pupil bull demon king was indeed a valuable treasure, but it seemed somewhat wasteful to use it at this stage of advancement. In the brief moment of his hesitation, the bidding had already exceeded 70 million godstones. It was too insane, although it was claimed to enhance from 10,000-fold to 13,000-fold. In reality, it couldn't add more than 3,000-fold to the divine body. Even with Jian Wushuang's current state of the boundless divine body, maximizing the improvement could only reach up to 2,000-fold of the divine body. To spend 70 million godstones for a 2,000-fold improvement was simply too extravagant. In his mind, Bai Junwang, the true powerhouse of the divine body faction, spoke lightly, within 10,000-fold is just the basics. The fact that you can transform a regular divine body into an boundless divine body within 10,000-fold times involves an element of luck. However, you should also know that beyond 10,000-fold, impurities will appear in the divine body. For extraordinary materials like the purple pupil bull demon king, there are very few impurities. Although the surface enhancement is often 3,000-fold times, removing the impurities may only result in an actual increase of less than 5,000-fold. The boundless divine body is somewhat special and can indeed be enhanced by 2,000-fold. Oh, I see. Jian Wushuang's favor towards the heavenly court was steadily decreasing. Many treasures were overhyped. Although he had 8 billion godstones, the primary focus now was on advancing the extreme Tao. Buying treasures related to the 5 elements of all things was crucial. With the breakthrough of the divine body, he was not anxious, thanks to his mother's support. The auction continued, and in the first phase all kinds of treasures were set at 20 items each. However, some of them could be divided into many parts, and many people bid continuously, directly winning them all. This made him marvel at the wealth of these people. Next is a complete divine body technique, the heavenly demon art, plus a pot of dragon snake wine that aids in breaking through the 20,000-fold divine body. The combined starting price is 100 million godstones. Upon hearing the starting price of 1 billion, the people in the hall gasped. This was too much of a rip-off. Indeed, the dragon snake wine was useful for breaking through the 20,000-fold divine body. But it was just one of the materials, yet it was priced so exorbitantly. As for the heavenly demon art, it was originally passed down from the heavens and couldn't be considered a top-notch technique in the Tiannan. At most, it could be considered above average. Seeing no one raising the bid, Nalan Sivi's eyebrows slightly furrowed. "I believe you are not unfamiliar with the heavenly demon art. This technique has been circulating in the Tiannan for a long time. However, what has been passed down is only the upper half, practicing up to the 6-arm heavenly demon body at most. But the complete heavenly demon art can be cultivated up to the 12-arm level." Nalan Si's words had just fallen, and the crowd was shocked. A 12-armed heavenly demon? Perhaps the heavenly demon from ancient times had only 12 arms. How could an ordinary cultivator possibly cultivate to 12 arms? Jian Wushuang also looked down with interest. If what Nalan Si said was really that powerful, it probably wouldn't be so easy. He remembered that the strongest figure in the heavenly demon sect back then was only an 8-armed heavenly demon, and the time they could maintain it was very short. In the realm of demonic cultivation, the formidable Taoist Liu Yang had only 6 arms. When it came to the emperor, not to mention 12 arms, even cultivating to an 8-armed heavenly demon would probably be enough to dominate the world. Regarding matters related to divine bodies, Bai Junwang understood more, and he had a slight connection with the heavenly demon sect. The supreme technique is considered top-notch. When cultivated to the extreme, it can reach up to 50,000 times the power of the divine body. It's a good choice for you. Your physical body is powerful, and your divine body contains boundless possibilities, making it very suitable, Bai Junwang commented lightly. Jian Wushuang was surprised. El thought it was so powerful, but the strongest can only reach 50,000-fold, because he was used to Bai Junwang boasting about his divine body, which was always 68,000-fold the usual power. Almost every time Bai Junwang would mention this number, to the point that now anything below Bai Junwang's standard was considered garbage. Aiming too high. It seems you still don't understand the depth of a 68,000-fold divine body. Bai Junwang's tone was very serious. He continued, "If you think you can achieve a 68,000-fold divine body just by smashing treasures, you are completely wrong. Without a profound foundation, relying on treasures can at most reach a 30,000-fold divine body. Breaking through afterward depends on the capacity of your unique technique and the divine body. The physical body is just the surface. The core lies in the divine power contained within the divine body." Jian Wushuang agreed with this statement and nodded. Indeed, he hadn't cultivated any supreme techniques at the moment, and it was something he should consider for the future. Relying solely on treasures wouldn't be a sustainable approach. The heavenly demon art was indeed well suited for the period before reaching the 50,000-fold divine body. Later on, he could consider switching to another technique for further advancement. Pursuing only the absolute best techniques might destabilize the foundation. Then let's bid for it. With determination, Jian Wushuang immediately announced 100 million plus another 500,000 godstones. Since no one seemed eager to bid, he added an extra 500,000 to test the waters. In various VIP rooms, powerful figures, including some elders from sects and clan leaders, were calculating their options. The heavenly demon art could serve as a treasure for their sects, and it was far superior to those incomplete ones. It presented a path towards a 50,000-fold divine body. 300 million. In one of the VIP rooms, a few Tier 5 emperors exchanged a few words and decided to secure the heavenly demon art. Upon hearing this offer, not only was Jian Wushuang dumbfounded, but many powerful figures in the hall also narrowed their eyes. It hadn't been long since the bidding began, and the price had already skyrocketed to this extent. Would there be any chance for them to make a move later? Many peak Tier 4 emperors with only that much worth couldn't compare to those sects and clans. 300 million? Jian Wushuang also felt that these people were insane. For a moment, he dared not make another bid. However, at this moment, Bai Junwang spoke up. Add another 100 million. Those sects are even more stingy than independent cultivators. 400 million. Who told you that? In my time, I was the ancestor of the Bai family. Upon hearing this statement, Jian Wushuang had nothing more to say. Experience-wise, he couldn't compete. On second thought, what Bai Junwang said made sense. Families and sects were not individuals. They were a collective. They wouldn't recklessly raise the bid. Sure enough, after he bid for billion, no one else increased the price. What surprised Jian Wushuang, however, was that this heavenly demon art was just a basic version. No wonder the starting price was so low. Apart from being useful for breaking through the 20,000-fold divine body, the dragon serpent wine was also the primary enhancement material for after the 20,000-fold divine body. The divine body was roughly divided into 9 layers, similar to the origin source Tao. Each layer consisted of 10,000-fold divine body. Currently, he hadn't even broken through the first layer. The treasures needed for the first layer were the cheapest and simplest. The total cost would not exceed 100 million. But the second layer would increase tenfold, and the third layer was considered the peak of the early stages, also the pinnacle for many cultivators in their lifetime. Even so, the expenditure was on the level of tens of billions. No wonder the divine body cultivation path, claiming to have no significant threshold, yet its most significant hurdle is the treasures themselves. For the scions of major clans, there is the backing of their family. But for lone cultivators, they have to rely entirely on themselves. Many Tier 3 emperors, even after a lifetime of struggle, only achieve a divine body power of 7,000 or 8,000. Just like Xiamang Guanyu with his privileged status, he reached a divine body power of 8,000-fold when he was still a Tao Lord. His opportunities were not lacking, but even now, he just barely reached 10,000-fold. After obtaining the heavenly demon technique or art, countless avatars emerged within him. Seated on the origin source pillar, he began his research. With the assistance of the formidable divine body expert, Bai Junwang, progress was swift, and within at most 1,000 years, he could ascend to the Mahayana stage. Countless avatars comprehended, increasing the efficiency by 1,000-fold. This means that within a year, he could reach the level of Taoist Liang and unleash the 6-arm heavenly demon form. It's worth noting that Xiamang Guanyu, with only a 4-arm heavenly demon form, could only be considered to be in the minor attainment realm. Even in the minor attainment realm, it allowed him to boost his divine body to a 1,000-fold, an additional 2,000-fold on the foundation. Once his basic divine body broke through 1,000-fold, coupled with the extravagant use of treasures and the unleashing of the 6-arm heavenly demon form, it's likely his divine body could soar straight to 20,000-fold. The next item up for auction is a supreme treasure, but Jian Wushuang shows no interest and simply observes the unfolding events. Most of them are composite supreme treasures. For instance, a necklace with 108 pillars, crafted from stars. Each pillar is a supreme treasure, and when united, their combined power surpasses even some eternal treasures designed for defense. The treasures on display were exceptionally suitable for Tier 4 emperors, but the starting prices were outrageously high. With a base price of 80 million, many Tier 4 emperors were discouraged. The remaining items attracted those with profound backgrounds. The final transaction price settled at a staggering 140 million. Quite worthwhile. Alright, now let's move on to the second phase. The average price for the treasures in this phase is around 100 million. Fellow Taoists, please be prepared. The first item, the feather of the Great Ming King. You should all remember the once dominant Great Ming King in Tiannan. This feather was found in the Forest of Eternal Secrets at the site of his ascension. The starting bid is 100 million godstones. Great Ming King. The crowd was shocked. Even the several six-tier emperors sitting in the VIP room revealed eyes of disbelief. The Forest of Eternal Secrets used to be a treasure trove but was not particularly famous. However, since a significant event occurred there, it became a restricted area in the realm. They knew little about what happened inside, but more than 10 Tier 6 emperors had definitely fallen there, including the peacock Great Ming King. Now, someone was able to obtain treasures from that place, making them incredibly valuable. Throughout the realm, countless powerhouses coveted the treasures of the Great Ming King. The appearance of a feather now, did it imply that the experts from the heavenly court had obtained the corpse of the Great Ming King? L bid 500 million, 800 million, 20 billion. Bidding quickly surpassed the limits of the Tier 4 realm. Current bids were coming from Tier 5 and even Tier 6 emperors. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. Wasn't it just a feather? Was it necessary to be like this? He had seen a feather that rivaled the world. That was a true treasure. Originally, he had thought of buying this peacock feather imbued with the 5 elements to enhance his extreme Tao. Now it seemed he had no hope. In the end, this feather was sent into a certain VIP room. Presumably, a Tier 5 emperor succeeded in obtaining it. Never mind. The Forest of Eternal Secrets is not something we can fathom. Even if I get that feather, one won't be able to deduce anything. Even Tier 6 emperors could fall in groups. It was indeed not a place they dared to investigate. The prices of the subsequent treasures were relatively stable, much more expensive than the previous round, but not as extravagant as the first item. People could still accept them. Jian Wushuang also took the opportunity to bid on some items, spending billions of godstones. Now he had already consumed nearly 10 billion. Auctioning on one side, cultivating on the other. Finally, it came to treasures related to formations. The Luoho formation he had set his eyes on was among them. However, the starting price had changed. Based on the grand formation laid out by the ancient god Luoho, this formation has been modified by the Heavenly Court Formation Master Elder Inyang and has now become a simplified version, requiring only a Tier 4 emperor to set it up. Simplified version? It's a bit regrettable. Emperor Xia Mang Yunxing stood by the huge French window, looking at the formation in the hall, his eyes showing a glimmer that soon disappeared. If it were the strongest Luoho battle formation set up by a Tier 6 emperor, the combat power could skyrocket several times. Beside him was a Tier 6 force. If they had the real Luoho battle formation, their chances of winning against the demon horde might be even greater. If it were the strongest version of the Luoho formation, it would probably require the payment of several tens of billions of godstones, but for the Great Xia dynasty, these godstones were not considered much. Starting bid, 250 million, 5 million cheaper than what Jian Wushuang had inquired. 300 million, 450.5 million. Many slightly smaller forces began to bid. Once this formation was set up, a Tier 4 emperor could contend against a Tier 5 emperor, especially suitable for these medium and small-sized families. Not all families had Tier 5 emperors. Some small families only had 2 or 3 Tier 4 emperors. If they obtained this formation, it would cause their family's strength to surge again. Within a billion, it was all worth it. Jian Wushuang wasn't in a hurry to bid. He hadn't anticipated such fierce competition, but fortunately, he had plenty of godstones. Once the price reached 8 billion, the voices became sparse. Each subsequent bid increased by around 20 million. 1 billion. Jian Wushuang made his bid. A bold move. As expected, the clamor of competition diminished. Just as Xianxia was about to declare the winner, a voice echoed in the hall. 1.8 billion. Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows, nearly letting out a curse. An 8 billion increase in a single bid. That was a substantial amount of godstones. Moreover, the bidder was among the strong figures in the hall. The strongest in the hall was only a tier 4 emperor. Did he really have that much money? Jian Wushuang's voice deepened. Shortly after, an elderly man arrived, an emperor from the heavenly court. I want to verify the opponent's bid. Upon hearing this, the old man revealed a faint smile and said, Esteemed friend, you can rest assured. If the other party can state the price, they can afford it. Otherwise, they'll have to disappear. Humph! What if I raise the bid, and the other party doesn't follow? I'd end up wasting 1 billion godstones for nothing? Jian Wushuang felt like he was being played. If he didn't need it urgently, he would have loved to see how the other party would handle this. However, he had to secure this formation. He had no choice but to follow through. The old man understood Jian Wushuang's concern and conveyed the message. Not long after, the emperor who made the bid in the hall handed a treasure to the heavenly court representative. With just a glance, the heavenly court figure provided a clear response. Bid confirmed. Upon hearing this answer, Jian Wushuang's face was full of resentment. 1.8 billion and 1 million. No matter how much the other party bids, I'll add 1 million godstones more. Since they were at odds, Jian Wushuang wanted to see just how much money the other party had. At the same time, he instructed Bai Junwang to mobilize heavenly court personnel to investigate the identity of the emperor in the hall. Though there were no central figures in the heavenly court, it shouldn't be difficult to find out the identity of an emperor sitting in the hall. No, the people from the Kuei organization are not in the core, and all identity information is controlled in the core. Perhaps only Xianxia knows the identity of that person. Bai Junwang shared the gathered information. Jian Wushuang had no choice but to increase the bid. He added 1 million, and the other party added 500,000. This pattern continued. Although the increase per bid was smaller, the number of bids was high. Soon it reached 2 billion. 3 billion. Jian Wushuang stood up, staring at the emperor in the hall. In a secluded throne in the hall, the mysterious emperor who made the bid revealed a cold smile and loudly declared, Since you're so eager, I'll give it to you. After saying this, he pressed his hand down, indicating that he wouldn't bid any further. Jian Wushuang was fuming in the VIP room. In the hall, voices gradually rose. Though curious, no one spoke much, unsure of the bidder's identity. Some powerful individuals disguised their strength, a common occurrence in such gatherings. However, playing with so many godstones was unusual. Several tens of billions of godstones. Even a tier 5 emperor wouldn't play around with them so casually. After obtaining the formation, Jian Wushuang felt it was nothing special. 3 billion. He ignored the subsequent formations, as comprehending them required a lower level of skill. After calming down, he felt increasingly regretful. It was simply a lack of strength. If he had Bai Junwang's power, he would have confronted and defeated the person. The auction had lasted a month for just the first half, with tens of thousands of treasures auctioned. The pace was relatively fast due to some overlapping items. Otherwise, it would have taken half a year. After the first half, 10 special treasures would be auctioned. Throughout the first half, Jian Wushuang spent over 5 billion godstones. He nearly gathered all the treasures needed for the extreme Dao origin source, buying them while simultaneously absorbing and refining. He also practiced the heavenly demon's profound techniques, managing his time judiciously without wasting a moment. Bai Junwang on the origin source pillar felt a stir in his heart, his gaze penetrating through. He looked toward the auction hall. A familiar sensation, something that Bai Junwang found familiar was, at least, a relic from ancient times. Jian Wushuang also became curious and asked, What is it? It's the aura. A very familiar aura. Similar to your sword qi. Bai Junwang stared at the 10 special treasures in the hall. Is it the jade qilin? The yen-transforming divine rod? The Heavenly Oracle Codex? It's that rod. Bai Junwang pointed to the yen-transforming divine rod. Jian Wushuang became even more puzzled. How could a rod be similar to his sword qi? Look at the patterns on it, Bai Junwang reminded. Jian Wushuang followed his gaze, and his eyes narrowed. The yen-transforming divine rod seemed to be right in front of him, and the patterns on it were clearly visible. What is this? These don't seem like patterns. Bai Junwang also discerned something hidden within and revealed a look of fear. Sword intent, similar to the sword intent on the surface of Chehuang City. It should be left behind by Emperor Jueyun. Jian Wushuang nodded, recognizing it. He had some connection with Emperor Jueyun and had once received teachings from him. Seeing Bai Junwang's fear, Jian Wushuang sighed and said, "He's already a bygone friend. There's no need to be afraid. You don't understand the terror of Emperor Jueyun. You simply don't comprehend. You're the heir of the Qishan Temple, of course you're not afraid." Bai Junwang sat back on the pillar of the origin source, crossing his hands, showing a deep apprehension. Soon someone made a bid. These 10 treasures were all extraordinary, and their starting prices were naturally exorbitant. Soon they all soared to several billion. One of them even exceeded the historical bid that Jian Wushuang had previously set. It directly shot up to 5 billion. It was a contest among Tier 5 emperors, and no one else could intervene. In the adjacent VIP room, Hu Qing stood by the window with Zhang Shang. 4 billion spirit of grass and wood. Hu Qing slowly stated the price. Zhang Shang, currently just an ordinary mortal cultivator, had no idea what a godstone was, and he had no concept of Hu Qing's offer. "Master, what is the use of this spirit of grass and wood? I can't see anything special about it, while other treasures seem more discernible." Zhang Shang was somewhat puzzled. Hu Qing smiled faintly and answered gently, "It's precisely because you can't see that I want to buy it." After bringing Zhang Shang here, he discovered that the latter could actually see through the essence of those treasures, which surprised him. An ordinary mortal cultivator with such discerning eyes. If this were known to others, the entire realm would probably shake. And he also found that Zhang Shang's constitution was fundamentally different from the 4 great secret realms and even the external world. It seemed more like a special life form. Lowering his head, he looked into Zhang Shang's eyes, where it seemed as if a vast starry sea resided. Spirit of grass and wood. In the 5 elements, this can be considered the ultimate treasure of the Wood Dao. Apart from the 4 great temples, there are very few who can produce such a treasure. Bai Junwang nodded, and Jian Wushuang agreed, just as Bai Junwang had said. Such treasures appearing in the hands of the indigenous people was a kind of waste. Cost only 4 billion godstones. Nobody knew which lucky or unlucky fellow bought it. Lucky because they found a treasure, unlucky because the indigenous emperors had no use for it. On Hu Qing's side, after obtaining the spirit of the plants and trees, he carefully studied it. He discovered something suspicious. No wonder Zhang Shang couldn't see its true nature. The spirit of grass and wood was just a name. He never expected that the plants and trees had truly formed consciousness and possessed a true spirit. The condensed true spirit laid a mist on the spirit of the plants and trees, blocking others' observations. A real treasure. Hu Qing, with his normally steady temperament, couldn't help but reveal a smile after obtaining such a treasure. The value of this spirit of grass and wood was too high. Even if placed in the 4 temples, it would still be a priceless treasure. Having a true spirit meant that this spirit of grass and wood could still grow. Zhang Shang, curious on the side, unconsciously reached out to touch the spirit of grass and wood. But when she touched it, her finger instantly fell off. Blood sprayed out, staining the ground. A considerable amount also contaminated the spirit of grass and wood. Seeing this, Hu Qing quickly grabbed Zhang Shang's delicate jade hand, infused a trace of yen power, and in an instant, Zhang Shang's finger returned to its original state. Zhang Shang pulled back her small hand, lowered her head, and stammered, "Master, I'm fine. It's good that nothing happened." The recent scene had genuinely startled Hu Qing. As he looked again at the spirit of grass and wood in his hand, he discovered that it had undergone a transformation. Originally just a segment of roots, it had now changed into a small plant. Woo woo! The true spirit contained within it unexpectedly emitted a sound. Hu Qing hastily used his divine power to seal the entire spirit of grass and wood. Then, a childlike boy emerged from the spirit of grass and wood, curiously staring outside. After glancing at Hu Qing and shaking his head, he turned to Jiang Shang. An expression of surprise appeared on his small face, his eyes widening. It was akin to the gaze of a lifelong bachelor seeing a young lady. Jiang Shang felt a chill in the depths of his heart. Master, Jiang Shang and Hu Qing exchanged a glance, both revealing expressions of astonishment. At the same time, 10 treasures were successively sold. On the side of Jian Wushuang, he directly entered seclusion on the spot. Completely unaware, the spirit of grass and wood from just now would change everything. In the distant sea of origin source, some Jinling was leisurely fishing. The entire Qixin temple had completely resumed its operation, and batches of inheritors were sent to the Grave God Mountain. After numerous selections by Yen immortals, guided by the Qixin temple, many ultimate existences emerged and began undergoing the trial of the Grand Yen immortals in the primitive realm. Like a cycle, batches of Grand Yen immortals entered the 4 great secret realms. In just a millennium, 100,000 inheritors were born, all settling in the Grave God Mountain. Now the 6th batch of people has settled in. Everything is progressing in a positive direction. However, a peculiar aura suddenly appeared in the 4 great secret realms, making Jinling uncomfortable. After a sneeze, Jinling, uneasy, checked the sky for a while and, finding no changes, still felt somewhat uneasy. Finally, he sensed the source. Is it still in the earthly realm? Eyes narrowed. Time backtracked. The forest of eternal secrets. Humph! Jinling was furious. While tracing back in time, he discovered a thief had entered the forest of eternal secrets. Long Yi, an angry shout. In the bloodthirst continent, Long Yi, who was drinking with a few ordinary mortals, heard Jinling's call. The alcohol's effects instantly vanished as he disappeared into a cave. The demon-like figures with pig heads, bull heads, and tiger heads thought they were hallucinating when they found their big brother sitting at the main seat suddenly disappearing. Rubbing their eyes, they realized it was indeed true, and they woke up. These monsters in the mountains were unaware that their big brother was the master of the entire bloodthirst continent. Swish! After arriving at the sea of origin source, Long Yi wiped his mouth and walked in front of the true spirit. My lord, what brings you to summon me? Jinling looked Long Yi up and down, shaking his head. Where did you put those emperors? Long Yi smiled awkwardly and slowly spoke. My lord, you said the 4 great secret realms lack manpower, and since we're not currently engaged in external warfare, one left them all in the 4 great secret realms to amuse themselves. You're quite carefree. Jinling couldn't help but laugh. Those Tier 4 emperors from the original universe, since entering the Grave God Mountain, broke through dozens of ranks in just a millennium. They had all reached the strength of Tier 5 emperors, and at this level, the 4 great secret realms had limited assistance to offer. The rest relied on their own insights. He let them follow Long Yi first to get familiar with external warfare. As a result, Long Yi treated these people like sheep, leaving them in the 4 great secret realms without supervision. These things were originally not a big deal. He could have turned a blind eye to them, but now an incident occurred in the 4 great secret realms. Bai Yi, with his hot temper, and overseeing the 4 great secret realms, calling him overproved futile. He could only vent his frustration on Long Yi. First, he scolded Long Yi, then moved on to the main topic. Now, go to the 4 great secret realms and bring those people back for me. If they can't operate freely in the bloodthirst continent, then take them to the River of Time for some training. If you don't want to go too far, then visit the Earth realm. I don't like that heavenly court. Go cause some trouble, kill a few people, especially someone named Nailin. I can't stand that Nailin anymore. At the mention of this name, Jinling became visibly irritated. A Tier 6 emperor who had lived for countless years had thrown away his dignity and secretly infiltrated the forest of eternal secrets to steal something. That place was originally a sealed location. Who knew what the old guy stole that made him feel uneasy? Long Yi quickly understood what Jinling wanted. He was told to recall those emperors, but wasn't this just using that title to send him to the 4 great secret realms to kill people? What's the matter? Do you have objections? Jinling looked at Long Yi with a slanting gaze. Bai Yi controlled the 4 great secret realms, tirelessly moving around, countless epochs never stopping. Zhu Yi now controlled the original realm, continuously selecting inheritors. Xuanwui? He really couldn't control that. Outside the main hall and beyond the control of the Sea of Origin source, he had no way to intervene. But no matter what, the other 3 hall masters each had their own responsibilities, and Long Yi was the most leisurely. He gave Long Yi a few emperors to take along, but he was too lazy to take them. Sometimes, he even doubted if Long Yi was created by Qixin. No, I'm going now. Long Yi quickly waved his hand. Without waiting for Jinling to say anything else, he disappeared on the spot, heading towards the direction of the 4 great secret realms. In the Sea of Origin, Dragon 1 was not considered significant, but within the boundaries of the 4 great secret realms, he was a force to be reckoned with, almost like a deity, unmatched by anyone. He was the strongest force in the Qixin Temple. Among the 4 temple masters, the one responsible for external campaigns possessed formidable strength. Swiftly moving through dimensions, Long Yi soon arrived in one of the 4 great secret realms. His appearance surprised Bai Yi. In this earth realm, Bai Yi's true self often held sway. Why are you here? Bai Yi looked at Long Yi inside the teleportation array with some astonishment. Stepping out of the array, Long Yi declared, I've been ordered to subdue the Nalan clan. His face was shrouded in a green battle armor, leaving only a pair of deeply blue eyes exposed, exuding a domineering aura. The Nalan clan? Bai Yi was puzzled, then remembered there was such a clan in this realm. But why would Long Yi, who usually presided over the bloodthirst continent, be sent to subdue them? Jinling. In an instant, Bai Yi thought of Jinling. To suddenly send Long Yi to the Earth realm to attack, it looked like the Earth realm was going to be in chaos again. This wasn't the Heaven realm, so Bai Yi didn't really care. Whether it was in the southern or northern regions, both had descended into chaos, and Long Yi could freely stir up trouble. Just as Bai Yi was about to step into the teleportation array again to proceed with the campaign against the Nalan clan, Long Yi suddenly walked down from the teleportation array. Need information. He arrived in the Earth realm, his vision obscured in darkness, completely clueless without any information. Bai Yi was momentarily stunned, then handed a jade slip to Long Yi. In Tianan, in the Great Xia Empire, the auction was still ongoing. The starting prices for the items auctioned later all exceeded 1 billion. Jian Wushuang had completely given up. Now, he only had 20 billion godstones left. He spent half of it on acquiring the Luoho battle formation and the heavenly demon technique. Another 2 billion godstones were spent on purchasing an origin treasure of the all things category. Actually, around 1 billion would have sufficed, but Jian Wushuang, fearing it might not be enough, doubled the amount. Now, the power of all things within him had begun to manifest externally. However, it was not enough. Only after a complete breakthrough could he fully grasp the power of all things. Only then would it be truly inexhaustible. Thought power devouring all things. The 9th layer of the extreme Tao, the 3 major forces. What was lacking now was the power of all things. After devouring all the treasures, the 6th layer was fully perfected, with just a hair's breadth away from breaking through. A bottleneck. He still needed an opportunity. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. This opportunity couldn't be forced. After mastering the power of all things, his origin could be considered a true great vehicle. The 7th layer of the ultimate Tao, the 7th layer of the supreme Tao, both reached the same level. His divine body had now increased 1,000-fold, and breakthrough was not an issue. Everything was progressing steadily according to his cultivation plan. According to his estimate, once the 9th transformation was complete, his combat power might rival that of a 4th-tier emperor. By then, he might not even need the Luoho battle formation to kill the demonic prince of Mo Luo. Unfortunately, the eye of the candle dragon had completely retired, and now the only useful things were the candle dragon's inner armor and its wings. The former represented defense, while the latter symbolized speed, albeit with a touch of defense. None of them possessed the beast god's origin source power. Although it was currently beneficial to him, it lacked the magical quality of the eye of the candle dragon, which could cause a surge in divine power. He had been in the 4 great secret realms for 1,000 years, but he had not heard of any treasure that could enhance divine power. There were treasures that defended the divine body, but none that made the divine body stronger. The only thing that could enhance the divine body was the supreme skill. With the retirement of the eye of the candle dragon, he could only rely on the heavenly demon art. It happened to match his current identity. He could openly cultivate the heavenly demon art. In just over a month, his comprehension of the heavenly demon art reached the small vehicle realm. Xiameng Guanyu had practiced for so many years and had just reached the small vehicle realm, but he achieved it in a month. Such was the power of the boundless divine body. At this moment, in the hall, the auction for the boundless ice corpse that he had put up for sale was underway. A corpse containing the boundless divine body, starting at 300 million godstones. Xianxia waved her hand, and behind her appeared a vivid ice corpse, the wife who had recently fallen to sword chi. When the crowd saw the ice corpse, there was not much surprise. Many had heard that the 9th prince of the Great Xia had somehow obtained a high-profile ice corpse and flaunted it at the auction house. A corpse containing the boundless divine body. Our sect wants it. An elderly man sitting in a VIP room pressed his wrist, and his attendant began to bid. A corpse containing the boundless divine body might not be consumable by others, but it could be transplanted. As long as the perfect graft is achieved, it is equivalent to adding a powerful figure within boundless divine body, an unparalleled treasure in the forging of divine body heritage. The base price of 300 million was too low. 1 billion. The followers of that old man were all Tier 4 emperors, and their offer was extremely arrogant. The identity of that old man was extraordinary. Although he was a Tier 5 emperor, the resources he could mobilize were probably not weaker than a whole family. Because he was the founder of a sect within the Great Xia country. In the hall, the mysterious emperor who had challenged Jian Wushuang initially revealed a greedy look in his eyes. Not only him, but many emperors in the hall possessed divine bodies that were thousands of times more powerful. The person being grafted must have the same type of divine body. He wasn't the only one. Many emperors in the hall had 10,000-fold divine bodies. The person who was to be transplanted had to have the same divine body. Jian Wushuang's wife, who was close to the Tier 3 emperor before her death, had her boundless divine body completely erupt, reaching around 1,000 times. Whether a Tier 3 emperor followed the divine body Tao or not, they were at this level, and they were not ordinary emperors who had just reached this level. Many of these Tier 3 emperors had extraordinary identities, and there were few among them who were wanderers. Those who could come here were generally Tier 4 emperors. The wanderers who could reach this level were generally Tier 4 emperors. Those Tier 5 and even 6 emperors were fighting for the benefit of their sects or families, but these Tier 3 and 4 emperors were fighting for themselves. Unfortunately, they still couldn't compete. At this moment, most of the people in the hall showed envy. If their backgrounds were powerful, they wouldn't be in the hall. Within their sects or families, they were elites, but the resources they could obtain were not many. Several tens of millions, even hundreds of millions, were simple, but several billion far exceeded their own scope. Now, in the hall, there were only a few who could join in the bidding, mostly people from the VIP room upstairs. Jian Wushuang's sharp eyes stared down, and there was a hint of joy in his heart. He knew that the boundless divine body was precious, one of the 10 ancient divine bodies, but he didn't expect it to be so crazy, causing those old monsters to bid frantically. Especially when he saw that mysterious emperor who had deliberately raised the price of the Luo Ho formation earlier, he was even more delighted. El bid 9,990 million. Jian Wushuang had a smile on his face, deliberately waiting for that mysterious emperor to bid before pressing up. The mysterious emperor below recognized him as the one who had previously bought the Luo Ho formation, and his brows furrowed slightly. At that time, he just wanted to have some fun, not particularly interested in the Luoho formation. If he really bought it, it didn't matter. However, he had already decided on this boundless ice corpse. He was also a wealthy person, not because he had many godstones, but because he had sold a treasure in the heavenly court, and the quota given to him was too much. The divine body, though surpassing the ice corpse, had a method to extract the boundless divine body essence from within that corpse, elevating it and aligning it with itself before merging the two. The cost was steep, a minimum investment in the billions, but spending such a sum guaranteed the dual cultivation of the divine essence at the core, a lucrative deal that was foolproof. As a Tier 5 emperor, traversing any ancient relic within the earthly domains was routine, each venture yielding hundreds of millions. Over countless epochs, fortunes accumulated, and even for the ancient beings who had lived countless years with significant daily expenses, their net worth was substantial. Take Shenyuan Pan, for instance, who casually destroyed treasures worth billions of divine stones, lost another 8 billion, totaling a staggering 10 billion, yet remained unfazed, the only regret being the inability to find the assailant. For these individuals, godstones were inconsequential. Bolstering strength was paramount. 3 billion, declared the mysterious emperor, uninterested in playful banter with the unmatched swordsman, instantly elevating the bid by 1 billion. 5 billion. 6 billion. Humph! A muffled sound echoed from above, followed by a surge of formidable momentum. Then, a domineering voice resonated. 10 billion. The imposing aura barely dispersed when it was effortlessly dissipated by Xianxia. This was an auction house, and many lesser emperors were present, unable to withstand the fury of a Tier 6 emperor. It served as a warning, a reminder to those with discernment not to bid when a Tier 6 emperor intervened. It wasn't about overpowering others but making it clear to everyone that the financial prowess of a Tier 6 emperor was beyond their comparison. A Tier 6 emperor could venture into the most perilous relics. In the heart of the forest of eternal secrets, even the spirit of grass and wood could fetch several billions. The abundance of these spirits in the forest was beyond imagination. If it weren't sealed off, entering it would be a piece of cake for a Tier 6 emperor, and they could effortlessly obtain treasures worth tens billions of godstones in just one visit. 10.8 billion. The mysterious emperor in the hall persisted, unwilling to give up. One final attempt. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, his heart pounding. This time he truly let go. Surprisingly, it sold for 10 billion. And there were still people willing to bid higher. Originally estimated to sell for at most several tens of billions, Jian Wushuang never expected it to reach hundreds of billions. Nonchalantly, Bai Junwang reminded, "Don't be too surprised. When you possess wealth beyond measure, encountering something you like, be it a 1 billion or 10 billion, it doesn't matter." Beyond measure? Jian Wushuang shook his head. He had once reached that level in the mundane world of his hometown. When wealth became limitless, the things one liked became scarce, and the person underwent a transformation. Pursuits faded away, and cultivators had to be endlessly ambitious. Once they stopped, they would fall into neglect. Only constant breakthroughs, continuous strengthening, embodied the true path. The outcome was inconsequential. The journey was what truly shook the soul. In the VIP hall, the ancestor of the sect shook his head, choosing not to instruct his attendants to continue bidding. Now only the Tier 6 emperor remained. 20 billion. The domineering voice echoed once more. The mysterious emperor in the hall gave up entirely. Jian Wushuang was eager to bid again. Perhaps that Tier 6 emperor might have shouted up to 100 billion. He was the seller, unable to call out prices. That was the rule. Once an item was listed, there was no redemption. In the end, the boundless ice corpse fell into the hands of the Tier 6 emperor, and the auction continued. In less than 15 minutes, someone brought over a mustard seed containing 20 billion godstones. After a brief exploration, a trace of telekinesis penetrated the mustard seed, revealing 2 massive jet-black godstones, their eyes gleaming. Remarkably, they're conjoined. Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised. The godstones he had seen before were all less than 3 inches in length and width. Bai Junwang explained, That Tier 6 emperor must have used a treasure to mortgage 20 billion godstones. Except for some Tier 6 emperors from family sects, they generally won't carry too many divine stones. For them, godstones are insignificant. Even if they obtain a massive amount, they'll quickly spend it on treasures like emperor-grade pills or treasures that restore their origin source. Those are the real hard currencies. As for these godstones, they are condensed by powerful beings, and they can't be bothered to divide them. I estimate that the Heavenly Court has stored quite a few. Jian Wushuang saw godstones as a whole for the first time, and the power they contained was quite terrifying. About 100 godstones made up roughly one side, and this godstone worth 10 billion had countless sides. His value soared once again, giving Jian Wushuang the confidence to seek a treasure suitable for him among the upcoming finale items, especially the Eternal Treasure. The most ordinary Eternal Treasure should have a base price of around 10 billion. With luck, it might actually be attainable. After the exorbitant price of the Boundless Ice Corpse, the subsequent auctions surpass 10 billion at times. Especially a set of mature special life bones, already at the level of an emperor, approximately 30,000-fold divine body. It belonged to a powerhouse of Tier 5 strength. This price even exceeded 50 billion. Jian Wushuang looked at it with great envy. If he could devour this special life form, breaking through 30,000-fold wouldn't be an issue. The key lies in the technique of grafting. As long as one obtains the body of this special life form, they can transform themselves into a special life form of emperor-level strength. This is even more powerful than the 10 ancient divine bodies. After all, it is an inherently special life form. Jian Wushuang had once, during his time in the Great Sea region, transformed himself. His divine body was equivalent to an ordinary special life forms in the outside world. It was still far from this cosmic-level special life. Special life forms like Wanderer Chishui, born with a 10,000-fold divine body, are the truly formidable ones. At birth, they possessed a 10,000-fold divine body. Subsequently, it will increase again based on their realm. After breaking through to the emperor level, there may be 30,000-fold divine bodies. Such special life forms were born with the universe, and the strongest special life forms in the Qixin Temple probably don't differ much. The origin of the Qixin Temple is stronger than the universe, but it has flaws. Overall, it is similar to the original universe. There are flaws in the origin source, but the special life forms born from it are not much inferior. As the prices of treasures continue to soar, the auction is coming to an end. Dear friends, the highlight of this auction includes 100 treasures. The first 90 are not ranked in any particular order, but the strength of the last 10 treasures determines their ranking. Xianxia casually explained. Most of the powerful individuals present had participated in many auctions and were familiar with the rules. Many strong individuals remained calm. After all, they had lived through countless eras and had participated in many auctions like this. Although Jian Wushuang had a broad understanding, he also felt that it was somewhat exaggerated. The prices for the items earlier had already exceeded 50 billion. Now, with the 100 treasures being the highlight, the prices would undoubtedly be astronomical. Especially for the last 10 treasures, they might even exceed 100 billion. It's worth noting that the current cash that the Shenyuan family can bring to participate in the auction is only 100 billion. One shouldn't exhaust the family's resources just for one auction. The lone Tier 5 emperor walked alone, his net worth perhaps not as substantial. Even if he went to the extent of selling some treasures specifically for the auction, gathering 100 billion godstones, would that be enough to guarantee the purchase of a single item? His 20 billion seemed quite insignificant. It was likely that only the wealthy Tier 6 emperors could casually participate in the auction. The value of those old fellows was probably immeasurable. Countless epochs had passed, and even if they profited with each epoch, the accumulated wealth now was beyond measure. Don't underestimate those Tier 6 emperors too much. Each of them is like a gold-devouring behemoth, and even a Tier 5 emperor can't afford the resources needed for daily cultivation. Bai Junwang discerned Jian Wushuang's doubt. Jian Wushuang shook his head, saying calmly, "According to the information I've received, the upcoming treasures are not suitable for me. I've already bought what I needed, and there's no need to force it. And indeed, as he had said, the concluding treasures were all tailored for Tier 5 emperors, and some even for 6-tier emperors, with prices exceeding several hundred billion, and many breaking into the trillion range. For instance, a high-grade eternal treasure with a starting price of 50 billion was eventually auctioned for over 300 billion, bought by a Tier 6 emperor. It was a black war knife, belonging to the most ordinary category of eternal treasures, considering it was a single-target attack. Its value was not as high as those domain-type or palace-type eternal treasures. If it were a domain-type high-grade eternal treasure, its price might have surpassed 500 billion. Eternal treasures were still a distant concept for Jian Wushuang. At least, he would need to reach the Tier 4 emperor level to fully unleash their power. As a Dao Lord, the imitation eternal treasure he possessed was sufficient. The 29th item, 20 blood crystals of the Wind Beast God, each starting at 5 billion godstones. If all 20 were added together, the starting price would be 100 billion. The Wind Beast God. All the Tier 5 emperors were shaken by it. Beast God, the legendary Beast God. Anything related to the Beast God is considered priceless treasures in the mortal realm and even in the 4 great secret realms. The blood crystal of the Beast God is perhaps the most common treasure of the Beast God, but its effect is extraordinary for the emperors, almost defying the heavens. Not only for emperors, even if a Dao Lord has the money to buy it, it is a tremendous treasure for enhancing one's foundation. In the blood crystal of the Beast God of the Wind, it contains the winds of all things, the winds in space, and upon analysis, various great Daos such as thunder and lightning are found within. This is a super treasure for enhancing the origin source. Can even enhance the divine body. The only regret is that the Wind Beast God is somewhat niche. If it were the Gold Beast God, the price would probably be astronomical, fetching 1 trillion godstones for one. The Wind Beast God seems relatively less popular. But Jian Wushuang's extreme Tao encompasses all things, and regardless of which Beast God, it is useful to him. He used to admire the Beast God, imagining that one day he would become a powerful figure who could share in the feast of the Beast God. Now, although he hasn't achieved it, he has witnessed this grand feast. Just when everyone was excitedly calling out astronomical prices, Xianxia spoke up with a reminder that made many people sigh. The fellow Taoist who is offering these for sale has set a rule. Each person can only auction 1 blood crystal of the Beast God. The top 20 bids for the 20 blood crystals of the Beast God will be the ones to obtain them. The Tier 6 emperor sitting in the VIP room couldn't help but snort. Several hundred billion godstones. What's that? If he could obtain these blood crystals of the Beast God, his origin source could continue to improve. Now, his cultivation had reached a state of steady progress. He could only acquire some unconventional treasures to enhance his strength. The blood crystal of the Wind Beast God, now considered a supreme treasure for him, as a Tier 6 emperor with mastery over spatial divine thunder. He could exchange all his treasures, but unfortunately he could only afford one. It was truly regrettable. For them, improving their origin source strength was much more significant than delving into unconventional paths. Anyone could cultivate some mysterious techniques, but reaching the level of the origin source was a feat not everyone could achieve. While the Tier 6 emperor might be disappointed, the Tier 5 emperors would be delighted. There probably weren't many Tier 6 emperors here, giving them a good chance. Such opportunities. Jian Wushuang watched with envy, but unfortunately, he lacked the funds. 22 billion. He threw all his cash into the bid, instantly becoming the highest bidder. The other strong contenders didn't hesitate either and began crazily raising their bids. 30 billion. 28 billion. Soon, Jian Wushuang fell out of the top 10 bidders, making him extremely nervous. However, Bai Junwang wasn't too surprised. He had once possessed a power comparable to that of the Beast Gods. Back then, he was almost a withered old man, but when that power entered his body, it revitalized him, restoring him to his peak. Even to the extent of controlling the origin source of the universe, he had once single-handedly battled 2 supreme beings. Bai Junwang, that physical body of yours. Jian Wushuang licked his lips. Now, his bid had immediately dropped out of the top 20, and there weren't many treasures left on him that could be sold. He had no choice but to seek help from Bai Junwang. He remembered that when Bai Junwang's physical body and divine body disappeared, the other party had retained quite a few things, such as bones and skin tissues, as well as the power of the divine body. Bai Junwang was momentarily stunned, not expecting Jian Wushuang to have his sights set on him. For a moment he seemed a bit hesitant. That was his former physical body. Although it was already ruined and would no longer be of use in the future, he didn't want to sell it. Selling his own body. If news of this got out, where would he hide his face? Once a supreme powerhouse, now reduced to selling his own body. One word, if you agree, I will definitely repay you. Jian Wushuang was also a decisive person. If Bai Junwang didn't agree, he wouldn't force it. Take it. Emperor Bai T's figure appeared, handing over a colorful first-grade bone. It shimmered brilliantly, being the strongest Tier 6 bone. Its value was even greater. No need for excessive thanks, Bai Junwang said in a low voice. Jian Wushuang, remember, the help I gave you when you were weak. Whether you achieve success or I do first in the future, we must assist each other. Rest assured. Jian Wushuang was not ungrateful. In this moment, Bai Junwang became his benefactor, no matter how they had been in the past. If one were to consider ethics, after he helped Bai Junwang reshape his body, according to seniority, Bai Junwang should address him as father. However, he dared not say it out loud. If he did, Bai Junwang would probably be infuriated. 50 billion. After receiving the bone, Jian Wushuang made another offer. However, this price had not been displayed all along, and the heavenly court people probably didn't believe he had so many godstones. The next moment, someone approached from outside the door. Without waiting for the person to speak, Jian Wushuang directly tossed the bone fragment over. Is it enough? He asked. The newcomer was only a Tier 4 emperor, and seeing the bone, he couldn't believe it. His expression was shocked, and he said in amazement, I'll need to consult the elders about this. Jian Wushuang nodded, looking like a transcendent figure. Bai Junwang, on the other hand, was so angry that he stomped his foot and cursed loudly. Clearly, he was mad about the lack of recognition from the Tier 4 emperor. He silently made a note to find trouble in the heavenly court after recovering his strength. This Tier 4 emperor quickly stowed away the colorful bones and hurriedly entered the deepest part of the auction venue. Inside a hidden chamber, there were 7 Tier 5 emperors, each an expert in the field of appraising treasures. As soon as the colorful bones appeared, they all gasped in amazement. It surpasses the Tier 6 level? Another elderly man shook his head and said in a deep voice, Not for now. Its owner is much stronger than a Tier 6, but it hasn't exceeded the Tier 6 range yet. Elders, if there are no issues, I'll go and respond to the other party. The Tier 4 emperor who arrived seemed a bit anxious. After all, the bids outside were changing rapidly. The elderly appraiser handed the bones back and said, Indeed, there's no problem. It's just that these bones are too fresh, not like those from ancient Emperor Falls. They seem more like they were just taken out from the body. If Bai Junwang heard this, he would undoubtedly feel proud. Throughout history, it was rare for a powerful being to fall and still be able to collect their own flesh and carefully preserve it. The flesh and divine body had only fallen 1,000 years ago, making it quite new, and with proper preservation, it indeed looked as if it had just been extracted from the body. What's strange is that in the recent epoch, it seems that only the Forest of Eternal Secrets has witnessed the ultimate battle. Could it be that several appraising masters revealed fearful expressions? Could it be that besides the heavenly court, there were others who could enter the Forest of Eternal Secrets? Among them were those who had entered the Forest of Eternal Secrets. Just 1,000 years ago, after the great battle in the forest, it had been sealed off by the temple. However, the ancestor of the Nalan family possessed a spatial treasure that could move freely, taking them into the Forest of Eternal Secrets to excavate and bringing back numerous treasures. Like the spirit of grass and wood, there was a large number of them. Among them was a spirit that was harvested from the forest and now auctioned here. At this moment, They were unaware that the mature spirit had already become a true spirit, condensing its consciousness and hiding on the roots of the plant spirit they were auctioning. Now that it was in the possession of Hu Qing, if they knew how powerful it had become, they might have left immediately to capture Hu Qing and reclaim the treasure. However, they were currently ignorant, and there might not be another chance. The great calamity of the heavenly court was about to descend. A tremendously terrifying expert was on his way, and the strength of this expert was vaguely the best in the Qixin temple. Of course, except for Jinling. Even the ultimate emperor, without reaching the realm of the universe's secret laws, was not a match for him. The Tier 4 emperor hastily carried the colorful bones and returned to the room where Jian Wushuang was. Respectfully, he said, "The treasure is fine. May I ask if you intend to mortgage it or auction it?" "Auction it. Sell it today, no later." "No problem." After the other party left, Jian Wushuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that the offer might not be enough. After confirming the value, his bid went up. But 30 billion godstones were not particularly high at the moment, and it was precarious. He would likely have to increase the bid. In a nearby room, several strong members of the Shenyuan family had excitement in their eyes. Shenyuan Depan, as the second-ranking elder of the Kuei organization, had long since learned about the news of the beast god's blood crystal. He had prepared 100 billion godstones, just for this moment. His bid had always been in the top 10, and he would add to it whenever it dropped. "Father, with this treasure, I'm afraid it won't be long before fourth brother." The speaker was the eldest, Shenyuan Anqing. His strength and potential were average, but he possessed the talent to lead the family. In recent years, Shenyuan Depan led the family in battles, and in the capital, Shenyuan Anqing had always been overseeing the family, guiding the younger generations, playing a significant role in the future of the Shenyuan family. Shenyuan Anhai, the fourth of the generation in the Shenyuan family, his fourth brother, had now reached the fourth stage under his guidance and was on the verge of a breakthrough. Once he broke through, the Shenyuan family would have 2 Tier 5 emperors, and the family would naturally become great again. With Shenyuan Depan leading battles outside, he had gained confidence, knowing that the family had another Tier 5 emperor. At least he wouldn't fear death. Even if he fell, the family had others to support it. Therefore, they must obtain the beast god blood crystal. With the help of the beast god blood crystal, breaking through would not be a problem. The fourth, Shenyuan Anhai, had great potential and was in an invincible state at the same stage. His divine body was more than 29,000 times stronger, and his spatial origin was solid. If he broke through to the Tier 5 emperor, his strength could surpass Shenyuan Depan in the future. After all, he practiced both the divine body and the origin source. As long as Anhai breaks through, it's worth spending as much godstone as needed. Shenyuan Depan's gaze was steady, and almost certainly, he would secure a beast god blood crystal with 100 billion godstones. Report 60 billion. The price was still rising. Among the Tier 5 emperors who came this time, few cultivated the origin of the wind. However, this did not prevent them from bidding. Once obtained, they could sell it to those powerful cultivators who practiced the origin source of wind, thunder, electricity, or rain. It was a lucrative deal. On Jian Wushuang's side, the bid had already reached 50 billion, but it still lagged at the end. The value of that bone, the heavenly court set a base price of 20 billion, along with a limit of 50 billion. Adding his own capital, he could bid up to a maximum of 72 billion. Given the current trend, 50 billion is not stable, just put it all in. Jian Wushuang shook his head, not thinking about saving money. Instead of slowly adding up, it was better to go all in at once, causing some despair and fewer competitors. 72 billion. In an instant, Jian Wushuang's position jumped to second place. The first was 100 billion. The Tier 6 emperor had initially announced 100 billion and had been in the first position all along, unshakable. Even if the beast god blood crystal was given to the most suitable person, it could only be sold for 100 billion. This price was already very high, exceeding it would mean a loss. After Jian Wushuang placed his bid, some participants indeed dropped out, but others with strength kept raising bids crazily, all reaching 70 billion. Soon, the top 10 were all above 70 billion, and the lower ranks kept changing. Quickly, the 50 billion completely disappeared, and all were over 60 billion. The rankings gradually stabilized, indicating that many Tier 5 emperors had reached the end of their resources. Some participants also received internal information and were waiting for the treasure to be revealed later. One cannot put all their eggs in one basket. Soon, complete calm descended. Jian Wushuang's ranking was 17th. The three behind him all had 70 billion godstones. B, C, D. Congratulations to the top 20 friends above for obtaining the Beast God's Blood Crystal. Xianxia waved her hand, and the 20 Beast God Blood Crystals floated towards the 20 heavenly court guards, who would deliver them to the VIP rooms. The strong figures in the hall looked on with envy, including some hidden Tier 5 emperors, but this time, they were all outbid by those above. Compared to this, what intrigued people more was who was so lucky to receive the 20 blood crystals. The combined blood crystals, totaling over 1 trillion godstones, could gradually form a small-sized continent. Even a Tier 6 emperor might hesitate to sell such riches. They had their own channels, likely fetching higher prices by selling to acquaintances among the powerful. Emperors willing to auction such treasures were probably Tier 5 emperors. As for Tier 4 emperors, even with extraordinary luck, they wouldn't hope to amass this much blood crystal. The treasures of the beast god typically surfaced in formidable ruins, where even Tier 6 emperors might meet their demise. Fortune smiled upon Tier 5 emperors who obtained such treasures. It was not an uncommon occurrence. Once, a Tier 5 emperor with exceptional luck explored a residence belonging to a Tier 6 emperor, acquiring astonishing treasures. Ascending from an ordinary Tier 5 emperor to the pinnacle of the Tier 5, he established a superfamily, recruiting several other Tier 5 emperors. One could easily imagine the quantity of treasures he acquired. Over 1 trillion, this transactional price likely marked the pinnacle of the auction. Even the 10 showcase treasures at the end of the auction would probably struggle to surpass this price. After all, there were few Tier 6 emperors in attendance. Among the Tier 5 emperors capable of affording trillions, only a handful were leaders of major forces. For instance, the Emperor of Great Xia could mobilize trillions of godstones, given the vast expanse of Great Xia. Inside the room, Jian Wushuang held the blood-red crystal in one hand, and a roar from ancient times echoed within him. This feeling, it's too wonderful. The entire universe resonated with him. In just an instant, a slight movement occurred deep within his heart, and the power of all things surged accordingly. The 7th layer of the extreme Tao began to loosen. The power of all things erupting now was scattered. Once it broke through the 7th layer, it would have a source and could continue endlessly. Break! On the pillar of the origin source, Jian Wushuang roared, and the power of all things within him erupted. His entire being soared, frightening by Junwang, who was assisting Jian Wushuang in comprehending the heavenly demon's supreme technique. At the same time, envy flickered in by Junwang's eyes. Even if his own origin source was successfully refined, it would at most be comparable to the ultimate Tao. But now, Jian Wushuang's origin source had surpassed the ultimate Tao. On the side, the ultimate sword Tao had already reached the 7th layer, but when faced with the 6th layer of the extreme Tao, it still trembled. Watching all this, Bai Junwang's heart was filled with mixed emotions. He not only envied Jian Wushuang's strength but also his status. Although it was a bit tragic now, he could still restore his identity as a successor at any time and continue to receive the strong cultivation support of the Qixin Temple. But what about him? After reaching the peak of his strength upon recovery, would the Qixin Temple still take him in? If it weren't for the help of that divine spirit in concealing him, he feared that daring to show his face would result in either immediate death or being thrown into the 2nd prison to suffer. He had heard from Jian Wushuang that figures like Shan Jun had been thrown into the 2nd prison to suffer. Even if he fully recovered to his peak, he might not be as powerful as Shan Jun, and entering there, he might not survive for more than a few days. After all, there was a life-threatening danger even for Shan Jun. For him, Jian Wushuang was like a thigh that had not yet grown. Given Jian Wushuang's current foundation after merging the Daos, he might quickly catch up to his strength and undoubtedly become the top combat force of the Qixin Temple in the future. Rather than selling himself to the divine spirit, it was better to serve Jian Wushuang. At least in these days of interaction, he could see that Jian Wushuang was a person who repaid kindness. By helping Jian Wushuang now, he could expect his protection in the future, a profitable deal. Crack! The pillar of the extreme Tao's origin source began to shatter. This not only startled Bai Junwang but also made Jian Wushuang feel a sense of imminent death. The collapse of the pillar of origin source. What the hell was this operation? For a moment he was somewhat afraid to break through. However, the power of the extreme Tao was so domineering that Jian Wushuang's own consciousness couldn't control it. The pillar of origin source began to show numerous cracks, on the verge of collapse at any moment. Jian Wushuang stood above, trembling. He seemed to have figured it out. No wonder the power of all things had no source. It had always been at the center of this pillar. Now that the pillar of origin source was collapsing, he might be able to completely grasp the power of all things. Understanding this, Jian Wushuang began to increase his efforts. The blood crystal of the beast god was tightly clenched in his hand, its bloody color almost completely consumed without a trace of waste. Boom! The pillar of origin source trembled, and the cracks had expanded to a depth of several feet, unleashing an unprecedented power of all things. Rays of brilliant light burst out, breaking through in just an instant. From a distance, Bai Junwang, who had long hidden behind the ultimate origin source, peeked out his head. His pupils contracted as he muttered, "Jian Wushuang has gone mad. The origin source is about to explode, and he's still pushing it like this." It was too late to warn him. After all, it was the extreme Tao origin source. He had never heard of it before, and it was only when he entered Jian Wushuang's body that he discovered such a powerful origin source in the universe, which was simply unbelievable. He was very vague about the ultimate Tao and even more so about the extreme Tao. When he first discovered it, he thought it was nothing special. However, upon seeing the power unleashed by Jian Wushuang, he was completely astonished. A 9 revolutions great Yen Immortal, killing a Tier 3 emperor was as easy as slaughtering a pig, which was simply outrageous. Now, with another breakthrough, he could contend with a Tier 4 emperor. This wasn't even the limit. Once on the verge of harmonizing the Taos at that time, he could probably even slay a Tier 4 emperor. Some transcendent Tao lords, upon merging their Taos, directly ascended to the Tier 3 emperor. For those who followed the ultimate Tao or myriad Taos and some powerful special life forms, when they reached their limits and merged their Taos, they would soar directly to the Tier 4 emperor. Beings like Jian Wushuang, it was feared that upon merging paths, they would quickly reach the Tier 5 emperor. Even if they didn't reach the Tier 5, they were likely at the peak of the Tier 4. Shatter! With a resounding boom, the pillar of origin source completely shattered, and the space of the origin source, fueled by that surging breath, instantly began to expand. The space that was once confined to 1,000,000 miles now expanded, breaking through the range of 100 billion miles. Countless massive fragments of origin floated in the space of origin source. Now only one pillar remained. The ultimate Tao still stood in the center of the space of origin source. Bai Junwang stared blankly at everything, immense shock leaking from his eye sockets. His voice trembled as he said, This is space? Previously, when it was within 1,000,000 miles, Jian Wushuang's spatial origin source was only in a rudimentary state, and it hadn't improved much since he hadn't reached the emperor level yet. But now, this scene reminded Bai Junwang of spatial origin source. Such a grandiose space, evolved from the extreme Tao, was already comparable to the spatial origin source of a Tier 5 emperor. Moreover, those fragments formed by the pillars of the extreme Tao each contained incredibly formidable power. Jian Wushuang exhaled, slowly floating over. Standing on the pillar of origin source of the ultimate Tao, he scanned the surroundings. In his heart, he gained a clear understanding of the path ahead. These fragments could not be retained. He resented that the explosion just now wasn't thorough enough. If all the fragments had turned into the power of all things, condensing into the sea of all things, he was afraid he would have directly reached the 9th level of the extreme Tao, achieving complete perfection. At present, His cultivation had broken through the perfected 9 revolutions. However, both the extreme Dao and the sword Dao were at the 7th level, not yet reaching perfection. If they were to merge at this time, it could also be successful, and the probability was quite high. But the combat power after merging the Daos was probably not very strong. After all, the extreme Dao and sword Dao had not reached perfection before merging into the origin source of space, lacking a lot of foundation. External powerhouses facing scarce resources, some strong individuals with second-grade origin sources chose to merge at the 7th level, which was a move born out of helplessness. Who wouldn't want to achieve perfection in their breakthrough? However, the required resources were too vast. Now, these people entering the Qixin temple were there to make up for their foundations. Otherwise, the true spirits wouldn't even spare them a glance. Are you so afraid? Jian Wushuang lowered his head, looking at Bai Junwang hiding behind the origin Dao pillar of the ultimate Dao, revealing a hint of a smile. Now he was indeed happy. The extreme Dao had finally broken through, completely eliminating the power of devouring in his heart. The aura of evil that lingered around him also began to slowly disappear. His current appearance no longer had the fierceness of the past. Instead, it was quite affable, even more gentle than when he controlled the extreme Dao before. Bai Junwang rose into the air and, seeing that Jian Wushuang was unharmed, heaved a sigh of relief. Just now. Bai Junwang, somewhat puzzled, was about to say something but recalled the oath he had taken. Ask no more than necessary, so he swallowed his words. Jian Wushuang shook his head and calmly said, "It's nothing really. The power of all things is contained in the space. I've known this for a long time, but I didn't expect that beyond the 7th level, it would transform into a complete spatial realm. In this current space, there were still many fragments that needed to be slowly absorbed. Only by devouring all these fragments and transforming them into rich power of all things could his extreme Dao be considered perfectly complete." Bai Junwang nodded in astonishment. Having completely broken through, he was now free from any constraints. The next step was to continually perfect his origin source in preparation for the integration of Dao. Now, the integration of Dao was not too far away for him. Unlike before, where there was no sense of direction, only the path of cultivation. With his breakthrough in strength, he would head to Mo Luo. First, he would seize the components of the Beast God weapon, then help Bai Junwang condense his origin source. These were the two most crucial matters now. The scarcity of resources made him yearn for the Grave God Mountain. He had to hurry back there. Consciousness returned. Taking a deep breath, the true self opened its eyes again, revealing a glint of sharpness. The upcoming auction had little to do with him. Bai Junwang's bone was amazing, reaching a value of 80 billion. Deducting 50 billion for the bidding of the blood crystal, leaving 30 billion. 30 billion godstones were not enough to bid on treasures at the moment. Especially for individual items, the starting price was already at least 50 billion. The 11th item in the auction, with a base price of 1 billion, was the 9 Tribulation Thundersand, 1,000 grains, each the size of a fist. It was related to thunder, and could assist in cultivating the Heaven's Punishment Sword Strike. Eventually, it was securely auctioned off for 30 billion. This auction was considered a success. Originally planning to leave early, but they decided to stay after seeing the treasure from the 10th auction, a mysterious map. It was a map of the god's tomb. In the map, there was a route to the Grave God Mountain. When this item appeared, numerous powerhouses were shaken, and the starting price was even announced as 1 godstone. Following that came the questioning voices. Xianxia, is this map genuine? Spoke a Tier 6 emperor, who condensed as a huge head in the hall. Xianxia smiled calmly and said, "The reputation of my heavenly court guarantees it, and my father has verified its authenticity." Her father? Upon hearing this, the Tier 6 emperor felt a bit fearful and immediately dispersed the giant head. Xia's father. That was an extraordinary existence, on par with Bai Junwang's strength, a pinnacle figure in the realm. He personally verified it, so others naturally dared not say much. However, there was a point that Xia's father, Wuxia, was an extremely powerful figure. His ability to find the grave god mountain also had to do with his strength. For others, entering the god's tomb might mean encountering special life forms or the guardians directly killing them, making the danger level too high. Moreover, in recent years many inheritors had emerged, all coming down from the grave god mountain with varying strengths. Most were invincible within their own tiers. Among them were Tier 5 emperors who could even suppress Tier 6 emperors. Dao lords were even more incredible, capable of killing Tier 3 emperors. Of course, these were just rumors, and encounters with inheritors were rare. Seeing no one daring to bid, Xianxia spoke again. If anyone still has concerns, I can have the inheritor who put the map up for sale come out and clarify for everyone. Inheritor. Upon hearing these words, numerous gazes filled with curiosity were cast. Inside the room of the great Xia Emperor, Xiamang Yuxing turned his head towards Wuliang Buddha beside him and spoke. Brother Wuliang, I'll have to trouble you. The ancient mark on Wuliang Buddha's forehead furrowed as he slowly stood up. Even his appearance underwent a profound change during the process, and his aura underwent a tremendous transformation. El will fulfill what I promised. Don't forget your commitment. After changing his appearance, Wuliang Buddha left the room. Although Wuliang Buddha's altered appearance seemed ordinary, many people still expressed skepticism when he ascended the stage. Xianxia had prepared a countermeasure and spoke. If anyone doubts, a Tier 5 emperor is welcome to test freely. Engaging in a battle across tiers was a feat that few could achieve in the Earth realm. This was especially true for a Tier 4 emperor challenging a Tier 5 emperor. The mysterious emperor who had previously challenged Jian Wushuang stood up directly at this moment and shouted. I've long wanted to see if the so-called inheritor is as powerful as rumored. Today, I'll represent everyone in testing it out. With a wave of Xianxia's hand, a small space appeared, and the two entered a vast cave world, providing ample space for them to unleash their skills. Millions of onlookers focused their gazes on the revealed cave world. Jian Wushuang was also curious about the true strength of Wuliang Buddha, who had once been only at the peak of Tier 3. In just 1,000 years he had advanced to Tier 4. Even with the formidable origin source from the external world, defeating a Tier 5 emperor was no easy task. Moreover, the strength of the mysterious emperor challenging him was formidable even among Tier 5, at least at the top level. Wuliang Buddha had only broken through to Tier 4 in recent years. How strong could he be? The two in the cave world didn't waste words. Although the mysterious Tier 5 emperor spoke lightly, there was no hint of underestimating his opponent when he made his move. The first move was a palm strike imbued with the essence of spatial origin source. The might of this palm strike shook heaven and earth, forming a colossal golden palm that charged straight at Wuliang Buddha. Standing in the void, with his robe fluttering, Wuliang Buddha's brow furrowed. With just a glance, a tremendous force surged forth. Wuliang, his hands joined together, eyes wide with anger. With just one glance, the incoming giant palm began to falter. The mysterious emperor's gaze was astonished. Then he strengthened his divine power once again, launching a full-force attack. In an instant, tens of thousands of palms were swung. But in the next moment, the figure of the Wuliang Buddha seemed to vanish, only to reappear, engulfing the entire celestial world in his boundless form. Countless Wuliang Buddhas slowly raised a finger, and with a gentle touch, a burst of brilliance shot out. Piercing through all those giant palms, it even penetrated the body of the mysterious emperor. The finger was ordinary, nothing spectacular, just the power of a Tier 5 peak, but the technique belonged to a Tier 4 emperor. If this didn't prove anything, the technique of spatial transformation was undoubtedly at the Tier 5 peak level, a skill many Tier 5 emperors couldn't execute. The body of the mysterious emperor was pierced, his divine body destroyed, and even his origin source shook, clearly suppressed. With just one move, his divine body was injured. In a real battle, he probably wouldn't withstand a few more moves. The fact that the opponent possessed peak tier strength was undeniable. He's actually injured. A Tier 6 emperor with a higher level of insight immediately noticed the damage to the mysterious emperor's divine body and the trembling suppression of his origin source. The mysterious emperor harbored some unwillingness in his heart. Even if it turned out to be true, challenging across tiers shouldn't be so exaggerated. Could it be that those inheritors specifically choose peak emperors to challenge? His speculation was correct. Inheritors did indeed challenge those peak emperors, and they specifically targeted opponents who were a whole level stronger than themselves. The mysterious emperor's eyes showed fear, hastily saying, "Inheritors are indeed extraordinary. Let's leave it at that." Humph. Ever since the boundless Buddha entered the Qixin temple, especially after traversing the Demon Sound Mountain, a tremendous change had occurred. Previously suppressed by Tong Tian, he now erupted again. Although he didn't catch up to Tong Tian, there was hope. His actions were no longer as hesitant as before. Countless figures gathered, surrounding the mysterious emperor, and then they struck. A massive Buddha figure condensed, containing a power that terrified the mysterious emperor. "You!" The mysterious emperor didn't expect these inheritors to be so vengeful. Didn't he just question a few things? There was no need to be so ruthless. Rumble. "I'll return the favor with a palm. Let you see what true Tao is." Wuliang Buddha struck, radiating Buddha light that filled the sky, with a power that shook the heavens. This statement reminded Jian Wushuang of the phrase, "I understand the heavens better than you do." The transformation of the Wuliang Buddha caused a subtle change in Hu Qing's expression. The former Buddha Lord, with his supreme radiance, had now turned into what he appeared to be at present. It was truly unclear whether the appearance of the Qixin temple was a blessing or a curse. He felt a sense of nostalgia for the time spent with several masters. The thoughts of venturing into the great desolate wilderness to guide sentient beings still lingered, but the people from those days were either dead or changed beyond recognition. As a palm descended, the mysterious emperor's divine body disintegrated, leaving only the precarious origin source to support it, on the brink of collapse. If it weren't for that Tier 6 emperor intervening, Wuliang Buddha would have truly slain this mysterious emperor. Swish! Without waiting for Xianxia to speak, he directly sealed off the cave. "Now, any objections?" Wuliang Buddha said, sweeping a glance at the crowd, then looking up at those Tier 5 individuals. Inheritor. With a high status related to the temple, if a Tier 6 emperor were to take action, it would undoubtedly bring disaster. There had been incidents of heirs being abducted in the heavenly realm before. In the end, the newly rising power, the Elder Palace, took action, suppressing all emperors involved in the matter, wiping out the heavenly demon sect. The Sword Dao Holy Land, the Xianxia Palace, was disbanded, and the Xianxia Patriarch was sent to guard the Elder Palace, while all the emperors under the door were sent to the far north for mining. This incident was still vivid in memory. Anyone who dared to touch this sensitive matter, despite being in the earthly realm where the influence of the temple was moderate, should not forget the recent events in the Forest of Eternal Secrets. Seeing no one responding, Wuliang Buddha flicked his sleeve, not even sparing a glance at Xianxia, and left alone. He, with such arrogance, would never have willingly taken the position of royal teacher in Great Xia if it weren't for the task given by the Grave God Mountain. That map was merely a bargaining chip for today. He assisted Great Xia in securing the rejected land for this auction, and Great Xia went to war against the Mo Luo nation under the guise of business. Never underestimate the value this auction brings to Great Xia. Midway through the auction, Xianyang Yuxing successfully persuaded several Tier 5 emperors, offering over 1 trillion godstones. These Tier 5 emperors would play a crucial role when Great Xia and Mo Luo went to war. If the Great Xia was unstoppable, they would join in, dealing a collective blow to the enemy. If Great Xia and Mo Luo were deadlocked, they would guard the 4 major cities on the border for 1,000 years, avoiding the need for a desperate battle. For these Tier 5 emperors, this deal was too easy. Not much danger, just 50 billion godstones earned over 1,000 years. Xiamang Yuxing's method was similar to Jian Wushuang's, only the former was much wealthier. Trillions of godstones were nothing. The mobilization and war efforts of millions of cultivators were the real significant expenses. Weakening those families, whether in victory or defeat, the Great Xia royal family wouldn't lose. If they won, he would have merit. If they lost, the border's several major cities wouldn't be lost either. With over 20 Tier 5 Emperor forces, suppressing for 1,000 years would be easy. After a millennium, he still had other means. Emperors had countless methods. They were extraordinary individuals. When Wuliang Buddha returned to his room and restored his appearance, Xiamang Yuxing quickly stood up. Brother Wuliang, your strength has improved again. The inheritors are indeed extraordinary. This statement was not a compliment. It was a fact. The first time he met Wuliang Buddha, he could still contend with him, but now he probably couldn't. Xiamang Yuxing's strength was average, not much stronger than that mysterious emperor. With the proof of the inheritor, the credibility of this map increased. But the number of people who needed it was scarce. However, the heavenly court, which had already anticipated this, secretly informed many Tier 6 emperors. They all arrived this time with their strengths hidden, making it impossible for outsiders to detect. In the VIP room above, there were at least 10 Tier 6 old monsters. Now they spoke together and the price began to soar. Their bidding was no longer in the billions but in the trillions. The price quickly rose to 1 trillion. Xiamang Yuxing watched all this with some doubt. If this map was a treasure, why didn't the patriarch buy it privately in the first place? His status was extraordinary, and he knew a lot about the god's tomb. Only Tier 6 emperors could navigate inside, and although it had the richest resources, the time and space inside were chaotic. Tier 6 emperors would get lost easily, and once inside, they either died at the hands of special life forms or were sealed by those guarding spirits. Encountering special life forms allowed for resistance and escape, but when facing the guardians of the burial ground, there was no escaping. The only options were either to be sealed or suppressed. They were simply not opponents. However, the treasures within the god's tomb were too tempting. When the passage was first opened, many Tier 4 emperors entered, and upon leaving, each had ascended a level. There were even those who entered with Tier 4 strength and emerged as Tier 6 emperors. The temptation was overwhelming. It was said that a Tier 4 emperor at that time went to the Grave God Mountain, cultivated there for billions of years, and returned as a peak Tier 6 emperor. This story contributed to the long-lasting legend of Grave God Mountain. Now that the Xiamang clan's foundation was established, the ancestral figure could venture out without the need to guard the Great Xia. Within the imperial palace, with the protection of senior figures through major battles, there was no one who could threaten the Great Xia imperial city. This was their confidence. The entire array in the Great Xia imperial city was boundlessly powerful and incredibly strong. Even 10 Tier 6 emperors couldn't break it. In the mortal realm, an influence possessing 10 Tier 6 emperors was probably non-existent. In the heavenly court, there were only 7 well-known Tier 6 emperors. The Nalan family alone had 3, making them the foremost family in the entire Tiannan and the most influential in the heavenly court. That's why Nalan Ci had the audacity to host an auction in the Great Xia alone. It wasn't just because of her formidable strength, but also her astonishing background. This meant that no one would come to disrupt the event. Xiamang Yuxing couldn't figure it out and decided not to dwell on it. He had also pondered whether, one day, the Xiamang clan could dominate the entire Tiannan like the Nalan family. The auction for the map was intense, with several Tier 6 emperors refusing to back down. Humph, let it go this time. Knowing the heavenly court style, this map is definitely not unique. It will be auctioned again next time. Some Tier 6 emperors had already started to step back. Indeed, as they thought, the jade slip containing the map was not a single copy. It could be endlessly duplicated. When the map was leaked, the initial price for the first copy was exorbitant, and as the auction progressed, the prices for subsequent maps became cheaper. Although some people withdrew, the final map was auctioned for an astronomical price of 6.3 trillion, making it the most expensive item in this auction. Xiamang Yuxing wondered why the heavenly court placed it in the top 10. Could there be something even more expensive later? The powerful individual who bought the map was also curious. He privately inquired and, upon learning about the upcoming auction items, his eyes twitched. Exploration slots for the Forest of Eternal Secrets. A total of 9 slots. Compared to the God's Tomb, the Forest of Eternal Secrets might not be much, but it was not as dangerous as the God's Tomb. Almost anyone who entered could make a fortune. Although the heavenly court had already entered, there were still some tough treasures that they couldn't handle alone, so they decided to send a few more people in to profit. The price for these 9 slots ranged around 2 trillion godstones each, totaling even more than the map. However, obtaining the map made everything worthwhile. Although the first one was expensive, being the first to enter greatly increased the chances of obtaining more treasures. The remaining slots were quickly sold, with the Great Xia imperial family buying 1 slot, and the rest taken by the Tier 6 emperors. The Great Xia imperial family's purchase of a slot was obviously for the preparation of the Great Xia ancestor. Wuliang Buddha stood aside, showing no interest in any of this. In his eyes, the places where inheritors could freely come and go required a hefty price for these native emperors to enter, creating a tremendous sense of superiority. In the era dominated by the Tongtian Buddhist realm, he had never experienced such a feeling. As the auction neared its end, another grand spectacle unfolded. Boom! 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 Outside the Great Xia imperial city, a burly giant, adorned in a blue dragon-shaped armor, was stopped by the imperial city's grand array. The moment he sensed the threat, Xia Mang Yuxing soared into the sky, heading towards the northern gate. Just after the conclusion of the auction, millions of powerful individuals had gathered in the city. At this moment, they were all curious about who dared to disrespect the Xia Mang family's face and forcefully break through the formation. Everyone left the auction house, including Xianxia. Although she sensed that aura, it seemed ordinary to her, so she didn't pay much attention. Folding up the Heavenly Court's auction, she left an empty space and led the Heavenly Court's personnel towards the northern gate. Perhaps they could witness a free showdown between Tier 6 emperors. At the Grand Xia Ancestral Temple and the Great Xia Imperial Palace, powerful auras erupted simultaneously. The one in the Ancestral Temple was the patriarch of the Xia Mang family, while the one in the Imperial Palace was the Old Eunuch. In terms of seniority, the Old Eunuch was even higher than the Xia Mang family's patriarch. During the mundane era of Great Xia, the Old Eunuch had served as the eunuch protecting the royal lineage in the Imperial Palace. In the present day, the ancestors of the Great Xia have long since passed away, the exact duration of their demise lost to time. The founding ancestor of Great Xia, once a mere imperial prince, was recognized by an old eunuch for his spiritual roots, setting him on the path of cultivation. As time unfolded, the founding ancestor of Great Xia surpassed his own achievements, his prowess now exceeding the previous generation. The two figures exchanged a glance, nodded, and then disappeared into the northern city in an instant, but the city walls were already crowded with people. A Tier 6 emperor presided over, and the military station to guard the city, though seemingly formidable, was merely for show. Only tens of thousands safeguarded the safety of the imperial city, with a Tier 5 emperor leading the charge. In such a confrontation of this level, the Tier 5 emperor couldn't even find an opportunity to intervene, let alone participate. Now, the entire city wall was gathered with dozens of Tier 6 emperors, a scene unprecedented in its magnitude. Although 10 of them were mere spectators, the imposing presence on the side of Great Xia had reached its peak. Brother Xia Mang. Xianxia smiled faintly, observing the arrival of the elderly man in dragon robes who came to witness the spectacle. As for the old eunuch, she didn't recognize him, only having heard of him, not even knowing his name. She could only nod in acknowledgement. The ancestral patriarch of Great Xia was the sole surviving member of the Xia clan in the mundane Great Xia royal family. After Great Xia was established as a cultivation realm, he used his own name to create the Xia Mang clan. Today is a bit rushed. I must properly entertain Taoist Nalan next time, Xia Mang patriarch said with a slight smile. Don't bother with me. Just take a look at the newcomer. If you need help, you can contact the Bloodblade Hall. Xianxia didn't forget to recommend her own faction. The Xia Mang patriarch smiled faintly, thanked her, and then left the Imperial. The current emperor of Great Xia is only a Tier 5 emperor, and he dares not leave the city. What if the incoming Tier 6 emperor is hostile and annihilates him? Who would he turn to for justice? Even if Xia Mang patriarch could avenge him, what use would it be? The old eunuch also followed Xiamang Patriarch out of the imperial city. Outside the city, the giant man in green battle armor stood proudly in the void, indifferent to everything. Inside the city, except for Wuliang and Hu Qing, no one recognized him. That man. He was Long Yi. Wuliang knew him because all the emperors were in the bloodthirst continent at the time, and they had some discord back then. Hu Qing had become acquainted with Long Yi's teachings on Wuliang Mountain, and their relationship with Jinling made them quite familiar. Jian Wushuang, also an inheritor like Hu Qing, was unfamiliar with the Lord Long Yi. It was only through Bai Junwang's reminder that Jian Wushuang became aware of the identity of the person in question. Azure Dragon Temple Master, Lord Long Yi. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself, then thought of Lord Zhu Yi and Lord Bai Yi. Black Tortoise Temple Master. Jian Wushuang's gaze changed dramatically. Xuanwuyi. Xianyi. How could this be possible? After Xiany's disappearance, he had entered the Great Domain to search for clues about his teacher, Xianyi. However, the clues left on the turtle shell were sealed, and they were later destroyed in the Great Desolate Wilderness. He completely lost the trail. Now, thinking of this name again, his expression changed drastically. Unexpectedly, teacher Xianyi was actually one of the temple masters in the Qishan Temple. Of course, this was just speculation, and he couldn't guarantee if they shared the same name. When he first learned about temple masters Zhu Yi and Bai Yi, he had considered this possibility, but he didn't dare to confirm. What if the Azure Dragon, Lord Qinglong, was named Qing Yi, and the Black Tortoise, Lord Xuanwu, was called Wu Yi? What is his strength like? Is he here in his true form or his avatar form? Jian Wushuang was curious. Back then, the avatar form of Lord Bai Yi could almost match Bai Junwang and had nearly won. If it was his true form, Bai Junwang would probably be in trouble. Bai Junwang held his breath at this moment and answered cautiously, "It's his true form, and I've heard from the spirits that he is the leader of the 4 temples. I'm afraid I wouldn't last more than 3 moves against him at my peak." So strong. Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised. Or perhaps, Bai Junwang was too weak? Back then, the divine envoy Guangmu Tianzuan was one of the 108 envoys under the Qishan Temple, ranking in the top few hundred among the Tier 6 emperors in the ancient river of time. He was not even a match for Bai Junwang. Could be imagined how powerful Bai Junwang's peak was. He couldn't even withstand 3 moves in the hands of Lord Long Yi. One could only imagine how formidable Long Yi had become. He had heard of the most extraordinary emperor, the legendary Emperor Jueyun, a figure standing at the end of time. Perhaps only that person could be compared to Long Yi. Outside the city, the winds howled and clouds surged. Before Patriarch Xiamang could speak, Lord Long Yi across from him couldn't help but praise the grand formation of the imperial city. "This formation is quite interesting. I almost feel embarrassed to destroy it," he spoke arrogantly. Patriarch Xiamang remained serious, but the eunuch on his side chuckled strangely, his voice eerie. Patriarch Xiamang's gaze was steady, his aura hidden but formidable. He calmly said, "Friend, I wonder what brings you to our great Xia. If you need assistance, feel free to speak. Quite easygoing, actually. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just here to find a group of people and take back the treasures they shouldn't have." Long Yi spoke casually, causing a change in Xiamang's expression. He thought Long Yi was referring to the map. If it was about retrieving the map, then the other party's identity must be related to Grave God Mountain. At this thought, Xiamang couldn't afford to be careless. He had long known that the map was a hot potato and dared not acquire it. Now, someone had come looking for it, but he also couldn't afford to let them in. If they made a move within the imperial city, the capital of Great Xia would be in jeopardy. "Sir, can you give me face and leave the city? I won't interfere once you're outside." However, Long Yi shook his head. "No, there are too many people outside the city. It's too troublesome to catch them one by one." Xiamang felt a bit at a loss. Although he was confident in the grand formation, he didn't want to offend the other party. In the realm, he might not fear the temple's people, but if the other party was from Grave God Mountain, he couldn't afford to offend them. People unafraid of the Qixin Temple are mostly solitary Tier 6 emperors, unburdened and fearless. But for him and his family, they dare not confront it head-on. With wolves in front and tigers behind, he was momentarily at a loss. This makes it difficult for me. Patriarch Xia Meng finally shook his head, evidently unwilling to let the other party in. Long Yi, however, was full of confidence, his gaze becoming sharp. He spoke in a low voice, "If it's difficult, then don't bother." Boom! The next moment, he directly took action. Xianxia wanted to intervene but found that he couldn't even move his body. The old eunuch also revealed a surprised expression. With the appearance of the Azure Dragon, a deafening roar shook the surroundings. A massive Azure Dragon instantly shattered the imperial city's formation. The Tier 6 emperors who were watching the show had a drastic change in expression. Even Nalan Ci was greatly shocked. She had a considerable understanding of the formations of Great Xia, and even if her father came, breaking them would not be so easy. The person in front of her did it so quickly, breaking the formation in one move, yet not laying a hand on Xia Meng and the old eunuch. Everything was too bizarre. The Tier 6 emperors watching the spectacle immediately scattered to escape. Too powerful, this person is either a hidden old monster or someone from the Divine Temple. If they don't escape now, there won't be another chance. Long Yi broke the formation, took a step, and entered the imperial city. He looked at the fleeing emperors and calmly snapped his fingers. Freeze! Buzz! The space trembled, and all the cultivators in the entire Great Xia imperial city were frozen in place. Hu Qing and Wuliang Buddha recognized Long Yi, so they did not escape and slowly flew over at this moment. Hu Qing and Wuliang greet Temple Master Long Yi. The two bowed in respect. The formation shattered, and Xia Meng Yunqing did not escape. Seeing that Hu Qing and Wuliang both knew each other, he breathed a sigh of relief. He was shrewd enough to understand the current situation. The fact that Lord Long Yi didn't act against the Patriarch clearly indicated that he hadn't come for the Great Xia Empire. Lord Long Yi revealed a smile and boomed, "Nephew Hu Qing, don't be so formal." Then he glanced at Wuliang and just nodded. Hu Qing felt a bit awkward. On Grave God Mountain, Zhenling gave sermons, and due to the favor from the original planet, he was treated somewhat differently. The 4 temple masters and even the spirit keepers could tell that among the current inheritors, aside from the ultimate emperor, Hu Qing was the most favored by Zhenling inheritor. That was a rule established by Qixin Temple back in the day. It meant inheriting the Qixin Temple. If one inherited the Qixin Temple, these temple masters would naturally have to follow the new master. Currently, there was a high possibility that Hu Qing would inherit the Qixin Temple. It wasn't that Hu Qing's potential surpassed the ultimate emperor's by much. It was more about the fact that the ultimate emperor wasn't quite suitable to inherit the Qixin Temple. He was better suited for the position of the Divine Master. So, their expectations for Hu Qing were very high. Temple Master, may I ask the purpose of your visit to the Great Xia? Hu Qing looked at Lord Long Yi with curiosity. Long Yi pointed upward and casually said, "Just a small matter. Killing some people, capturing some others." These seemingly ruthless words sounded nonchalant coming from Lord Long Yi's mouth. He had been stationed on the Bloodthirst continent for years, and he never regarded these indigenous emperors as equals. This was also why there were so few powerful beings on the Bloodthirst continent. Those who resisted were all annihilated by him, leaving only those who obeyed. Anyone compliant he valued greatly. He casually chose treasures, and the quality of innate talent wasn't crucial. Obedience was all that mattered. This was also why he thrived in the mundane world, flourishing effortlessly. The Bloodthirst continent was his backyard, and he held numerous identities but never acted arrogantly. Not like Bai Yi, who was always exhausted. "Everyone, come back!" In this spatial domain, Long Yi's command echoed, and the scattered emperors promptly returned to their original positions. On the city wall, the crown prince wore a face full of shock. He originally thought Hu Qing was just an ordinary inheritor, but her status was unexpectedly high. Even powerful individuals were polite in his presence. This genuinely impressed him, eradicating any selfish thoughts. Faced with an inheritor of immense potential and individuals with superior status, he dared not harbor any personal motives. It was necessary to make connections, but not too deliberately. Xianxia, who had been standing next to Hu Qing, was still unaware of what had transpired. She blinked, looking at Hu Qing in the sky. However, no one noticed that after the space was frozen, aside from Hu Qing and the Wuliang Buddha, there was a third person who could move freely. Xianxia. It was as if she didn't belong to this spatial domain, something truly mysterious. Among the fleeing powerhouses were many emperors who had participated in the auction. The ones summoned back by the Azure Dragon were only those emperors who had participated in the auction, and everyone was once again gathered together. Facing the incomparably terrifying Long Yi, they dared not resist in any way. Outside the city, Xiamang Patriarch and the old eunuch, realizing they had regained their freedom, quickly approached, not daring to cause trouble again. However, the gaze of the old eunuch was constantly unfriendly, especially when he heard Hu Qing and Wu Liang shout out, "Temple Master Long Yi. Are you Nalan Ci?" he questioned. Nalan Ci's expression changed slightly, quickly revealing a smile and respectfully replying, "Junior Nalan Ci of the Nalan family? I greet Senior." Knowing her name made things easier. Her father was also a strong figure at this level, and there would be some face given to him, sparing her from unnecessary difficulties. "That's right. Finally got your whole family together." Long Yi's expression showed some displeasure. He had first gone to the heavenly court to capture the patriarch of the Nalan family, Nalan Zuosho. Then he ran to the southern border, capturing the Nalan family's grand elder, Nalan Wuyong. Going to the heavenly court was troublesome. He had to kill tens of thousands of people before capturing Nalan Zuosho. Capturing Nalan Wuyong at the southern border was even more troublesome. It would be too much hassle to capture each and every member of the Nalan family. But fortunately, Zhenling had said that those who needed to be killed were all killed. He activated Nalan Zuosho's bloodline, directly erasing all the members of the Nalan family through causality. Finally, only Nalan Ci was left. Capturing her would complete the first task, and the remaining task was to retrieve the treasures that dared not scatter. Upon hearing Long Yi's words, Nalan Ci was stunned. Long Yi's scaled claws closed around Nalan Ci's neck with a swift inhale. "You should be grateful. The old one got slaughtered, and the younger ones were killed too. You're somewhat special, being caught alive." Long Yi revealed a sinister grin. Unfortunately, he misunderstood. Zhenling sought Nalan Zuosho, not Nalan Ci. Long Yi thought the old Zhenling was interested in Nalan Ci, the young girl. Sharp claws pierced Nalan Ci's neck, and golden blood flowed down. The horrifying scene silenced even the Tier 6 emperors, who dared not breathe. Holding Nalan Ci with one hand, Long Yi turned to the others, smiling. "You don't need to worry. Just bring out all the treasures you bought at the auction." Everyone was stunned. With such power, did they really need to rob them of their treasures? But they didn't dare to ask. They immediately brought out their treasures. Countless items appeared in the sky with just a thought. The map obtained at a hefty cost was brought out without a second thought. Compared to life, what did the map matter? Hu Qing waved his hand, presenting a seed. It was the seed containing the spirit of grass and wood, ready to be handed over. He knew this was what Zhenling wanted, and he owed Zhenling a great favor, so he naturally cooperated. However, Long Yi waved his hand, saying, "We're on the same side. There's no need for this." Others were fine, but Jian Wushuang felt a bit awkward. He had used many treasures at that time. How could he bring them out now? He couldn't possibly hand himself over. Long Yi's gaze fell upon those emperors, his expression changing as he roared, "I'll count to 3. If it's not brought out, you all die." As soon as these words were spoken, many people reached into their possessions once again. Tier 6 emperors, Tier 5 emperors with more experience, knew there was no escape. Most Tier 4 emperors, however, clung to a hopeful attitude. A quick scan revealed a slight connection between causality and Nalan Ci. This indicated that someone still held onto a treasure acquired from the auction and hadn't turned it in. Long Yi couldn't be bothered to look further. With a thought, killing intent surged. It targeted the direction of the 9th prince of the great Xiamang Guanyu. The empress, Shenyuan Anshui, by Xiamang's side felt her heart sink. She wanted to move, but her body wouldn't budge. She was on the verge of tears. This was her only son. Xiamang Yunxing remained unchanged. He had many sons. This one didn't matter to him. As the threat approached, Jian Wushuang, disguised as Xiamang Guanyu, took out a jade plaque and wore it on his thumb. Long Yi turned his head, stunned on the spot. The personal item of Qixin, the jade plaque, he recognized. Moreover, it bore the aura of Qixin, making it unmistakable. This item was initially in Jian Wushuang's hands. He had heard about it from Guangmu, but after Jian Wushuang disappeared, the jade plaque vanished. And now it reappeared? Jian Wushuang? Long Yi was about to speak when he heard Jian Wushuang's transmission. Lord Long Yi, please conceal my identity. There are urgent matters at hand, and it's inconvenient to reveal who I am. Jian Wushuang nervously transmitted his message. He didn't know Long Yi and wasn't sure if this jade token could earn him some respect. He had already taken out the other treasures, but the absorbed divine blood crystals of the beast god were indeed something he couldn't produce. With an anxious heart, after a brief moment, Long Yi turned his head away, not looking at Xiamang Guanyu, which relieved Jian Wushuang. Shenyuan Anshui also let out a sigh of relief. However, Xiamang Yunxing revealed a puzzled expression. Why didn't Long Yi make a move? Softened hearts? Impossible. He never worried about whether Xiamang Guanyu would be killed. He was just curious about how Xiamang Guanyu managed to keep his life. The other party could easily crush a Tier 6 emperor, as if squashing an ant. How could there be any mercy? After today, he would definitely interrogate this son. Well, everything here is returned to you, but don't even think about these treasures. Long Yi took out Jian Wushuang's mustard seed, forcibly broke it open, revealing countless treasures and godstones inside. Following the law of causality indicated on the mustard seed, all items returned to their original owners. This also relieved everyone. Not participating in the auction this time didn't result in any loss. Jian Wushuang, upon seeing the godstones in front of him, discovered a mustard seed on top of it. Carefully putting it away and opening it, he instantly held his breath. Beast God Blood Crystal. Moreover, it was the blood crystal of the gold beast god, a total of 20. Previously, there were 20 blood crystals of the wind beast god, but now they had transformed into those of the gold beast god. Just as he was puzzled, the mysterious emperor who had clashed with the Wuliang Buddha earlier, somewhat unwillingly asked, "Senior, I'm still missing some blood crystals. Could you? Are you questioning me?" Wrath surrounded Long Yi's eyes. Apart from him, several Tier 5 emperors also noticed something missing but dared not act. What was lacking were some treasures useful for the ultimate Tao. All of them had been ingeniously given to Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing by Long Yi. Splat! The mysterious emperor's body exploded on the spot, and along with it, the origin source of his divine body turned into ashes. Anyone else have objections? Long Yi swept his gaze over everyone, and no one dared to respond. Only a few were missing, and the rest had received the original godstones and treasures. Naturally, they had no objections. Moreover, they admired this terrifying existence. Despite such a vast amount of treasures, he didn't covet any, but instead, gave them all to the others. Whoosh! All the confiscated treasures were collected by Long Yi into his mustard seed. He had no interest in these treasures at all. For him, things like map quotas did not mean anything. He could just go if he wanted to and leave if he wished. Lord Long Yi, this map. Wuliang presented a token and handed it to Long Yi. Glancing at the mission details on the token, he casually passed the map and token to Wuliang Buddha. Hu Qing, I'll be leaving first. See you on Grave God Mountain in the future. You can also take missions and find me on the Bloodthirst continent. Long Yi was enthusiastic about Hu Qing, But he looked down on Wuliang, who was not even on the path of the ultimate Tao and naturally held a low status. Wuliang Buddha stood aside, smiling on the surface, but internally swearing to trample on all those who looked down on him in the future. Moreover, his gaze towards Hu Qing had changed. Initially, Hu Qing was just a novice monk under his guidance. However, because he followed his ideology and went to convert sentient beings in the Great Sea region, he unexpectedly became an ultimate Grand Yen Immortal. He didn't expose the truth when facing Tongtian Buddha back then, and now there was no need to do so. A novice monk like him, whose status had now surpassed his, shook the self-esteem he had painstakingly accumulated. He was the first among the same-tier emperors to break through, and his strength was the strongest. He even surpassed the Tier 4 emperors who had entered with him. Not many could swiftly break through to Tier 5 emperor. He thought he was fast enough and should have gained recognition from the Qishan Temple, but they simply didn't care about him at all. These people were more concerned about practitioners of the ultimate Tao. I can't become an emperor in the ultimate Tao. All of them are Tier 6 emperors. Wuliang Buddha snorted coldly. After Long Yi left, the strong ones in the imperial city regained their freedom. Jian Wushuang also breathed a sigh of relief. Long Yi would definitely tell Zhenling about what happened while he was away. Actually, this is also good. He won't have to explain later. He wouldn't be considered as violating his oath. Killing two birds with one stone. Freed from restraint, Xia Meng Yuxing glanced at him, said nothing, while Xianyuan Anxue hurriedly approached. You were, Mother. After this change, the strong ones in the imperial city, whether they left or stayed, the news quickly spread throughout the entire Tiannan. What was even more shocking was the split of the heavenly court. The once mighty heavenly court now had only a few strong ones left. And with the split, it had already exited the stage of peak power. The Nalan family had vanished from Tiannan. Not a single survivor. Even the collateral branches were completely wiped out. After this change, the date for the Great Xia's expedition against Mo Luo Nation was postponed for a few years. The new era of Great Xia. Clan Grand Feast. After the events of the previous time, Great Xia was much more low-key now. Perhaps witnessing the swift demise of the powerful Nalan family gave him a new understanding of strength. After the grand banquet, he was detained by Xia Meng Yuxing and engaged in a father-son conversation until dawn in the study. Watching the figure of Xia Meng Guanyu. In Xia Meng Yuxing's heart, he pondered. He hadn't inquired too much about this son before, but he still had some understanding of his character. However, after the long talk, he discovered that this son was a great talent. The position of the crown prince is just a facade. Establishing a crown prince can only stimulate the competitive nature of other imperial sons. Like the second prince with great potential now at the peak of Tier 4, this is what he is willing to see. If there are suitable candidates, he certainly hopes that his son will inherit the throne. But the time for that is still far off. Either he breaks through to become a Tier 6 emperor, or Great Xia expands successfully, and he can retire after success, exploring the outside world and pursuing his own path. The prerequisite is that he must have a suitable successor, whether it's his son or a descendant within the clan. Now, it seems that Xia Meng Guanyu is also a suitable candidate, but his current strength is too weak. He needs to quickly achieve the position of emperor. After Jian Wushuang left, he instructed the people of the ancestral temple to send a batch of resources to Xia Meng Guanyu's mansion. Combined with the treasures brought by Xianyuan Anxue, Jian Wushuang gained quite a few treasures for free. Treasures for breaking through the divine body had already been obtained, and now his divine body has reached 12,000-fold its original strength. The current imperial emperor also sent quite a few treasures. Many of them were treasures related to his cultivation of the heavenly demon's ultimate technique. Now his heavenly demon skill has reached the level of 6 arms. Transcendent physical body. Boundless divine body. This divine body ultimate technique makes his cultivation progress much more efficient. Now, when he uses the heavenly demon incarnation, the divine body strength can rival that of a Tier 3 emperor. A full 15,000-fold divine body. The 6 arms add another 3,000-fold divine body. In addition to the treasures sent, he also has 1,000,000,000,000 divine stones at his disposal. And the blood crystal of the gold beast god. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the secret chamber of the royal mansion, a radiant smile adorning his face. He had been cautious about using the blood crystal of the gold beast god. It was far more potent than those 5 elemental origin sources. He had long since gathered all the 5 elemental origin sources. Now, it seemed wasteful to refine beast god weapons with those scraps. Using the blood crystal of the gold beast god for refinement would be truly perfect. Old man Bai, inquire among the experts of the Kuei organization near the Great Xia dynasty. See if there are reliable masters skilled in refining supreme origin treasures. I'm willing to pay a hefty price, but the person must be trustworthy, Jian Wushuang said, a glint in his eyes. Crafting treasures was not a skill possessed by the old man with the ram's horns alone. Among the emperors of the 4 great secret realms, there were still many masters of divine forging. There was no need to wait any longer. Now was the time he needed formidable strength. With the blood crystal of the gold beast god, he only needed some assistance to refine the beast god origin source. Over the years of sacrifices, he had gained a deep understanding of origin source refinement. The complete origin, blended with the power of all things. Once refined, it becomes a complete myriad of Taos. This path can rival the ultimate path. Such a vast and complex origin, over the years of blood sacrifice, he had refined it to a considerable extent. The beast god's origin source, at least in the eyes of the beast god, still had some remnants. He could use that trace of the beast god's origin source to create a prototype. Then it was a matter of merging these beast god weapons into one body. This was not difficult, but it required the top emperor to take charge of refining treasures. Before, he could find the old man with goat horns. Now, the diving spirit was willing to help him fully restore the beast god weapons, but he was not reassured. If it was just a simple merging, he could use the Kuei organization to find a master who refined treasures and personally visit them. He still had billions of godstones on him, a decent meeting gift. If things didn't work out, he could bring out some beast god blood crystals. The blood crystals of the gold beast god. Even tier 6 emperors would go crazy to snatch them. This time, Xianxia didn't bring them out, even being able to change the rules of the heavenly court. Obviously, he coveted the beast god blood crystals. Gold. It represented space. The emperor pursued the essence of space. Every Tao lord had their own path. What set him apart from others was that he followed the Tao of the sword and the extreme Tao. But now, having walked the extreme Tao, he understood that it was actually laying the foundation for the basis of space. In the universe, there was thought power, and this thought power created the foundation of the universe. Then, in the universe, the power of devouring gave rise to black holes, the strongest substance in the universe, and the Tao of destruction was discovered from within the black hole. Devour and then destroy, the power of all things. This was actually the power of the universe transformed. Now that he had mastered the power of all things, his control over space had greatly improved. As long as he succeeded in merging with the Tao, his breakthrough would be at least to the level of a tier 4 emperor, and there was even the possibility of directly advancing to become a tier 5 emperor. A tier 6 emperor, achievable even with continuous enlightenment. The strength of his foundation was evident. This was the terror of the extreme Tao. When he was a Tao lord, he had already laid a solid foundation for his future as an emperor. The brilliance of the sword Tao, once the sea of origin source formed, a pure and simple sword hung in the space. Countless dagus converged, giving rise to the strongest sword in the world. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but feel emotional. When he entered the Qishan temple, his strength was nothing special. Now, in the blink of an eye, with his current combat power, he had already reached the peak in the primal universe. He could contend with tier 4 emperors. Of course, the emperors in the original universe had complete Tao, much stronger than the indigenous emperors of the 4 great secret realms and not easy to deal with. The advantage of the 4 great secret realms lay in their ancient heritage and the abundance of treasures, giving rise to numerous formidable beings. In the past, the Great Sea region suddenly produced dozens of emperors because of an outer hall in the Qishan temple. Contained a devouring power. That was the source of destruction. With it, 10 times the number of emperors could be born. In the spatial domain of the Great Sea region, at most 2 or 3 emperors could be born simultaneously. Otherwise, after the destruction of the ancient era, it would not have taken so many years to recover its former glory. Now, looking at it, apart from Zhen Wuyang, he could also be considered as giving face to the Great Sea region. The day of mobilization was approaching. Although the master sought by Junwang had not been found, he wasn't too anxious. Instead, he secluded himself to cultivate the heavenly demon's ultimate technique and comprehend the Luoho battle formation. After breaking through the divine body, he directly multiplied his power by 15,000-fold. There were still plenty of godstones in his hands, but he wasn't in a hurry. If he went deep, he could even reach 30,000-fold. Although he was still a Tao Lord now, his physical body was too strong. He could even withstand his divine body reaching 30,000-fold. After all, the stronger the divine body, the higher the probability of successful integration in the future. However, according to the instructions of Bai Junwang, 30,000-fold was a threshold. He needed to continuously perfect the boundless divine body. To pursue further in the future, a solid foundation was necessary. The divine body is nurtured in space and naturally requires cooperation in space. When crafting the divine body, not all treasures should be used. The best way is to use the 5 elements treasures to forge the divine body. On this day, a new era dawned in Great Xia. Xiamang Guanyu had already visited the imperial palace early, first paying respects to Empress Shenyuan Anshui. Then he presented some valuable treasures, totaling over 1 million, as gifts. Afterwards, he went to Chenqing Palace to pay respects to the emperor. These were all formalities. In the morning, deep within the imperial palace, a large group of people sat on the teleportation array. These people were all members of the Xiamang clan. The only one from an external clan was the old eunuch. The power of the teleportation array was small, and the destination was not far. In fact, Jian Wushuang felt like he hadn't left the imperial city. The space twisted and a change occurred. "We're here." Many people revealed solemn expressions, especially the senior members of the Xiamang clan. Among these individuals, aside from the emperors and Tao lords, there were many Yen immortals from the outside world. They were all from the Xiamang clan, providing fresh blood to the clan. Upon their first visit, they couldn't conceal their astonished expressions. "Brother, is this the ancestral temple? Why does it feel so eerie?" A young Xiamang clan girl couldn't help but inquire. She had just broken through to become an Earth immortal. Previously, she was just a commoner without the qualifications to enter the ancestral temple. This was her first visit. The young Xiamang clan girl held a relatively high position and was close to Xiamang Guanyu in the middle. According to seniority, she had to address him as her uncle. She was the granddaughter of Xiamang Yunzhan, the cousin of Xiamang Guanyu's father. Due to the accomplishments of Xiamang Yunzhan, his sons became formidable emperors, and in the next generation several emperors emerged. One of his sons even reached the pinnacle of the Tier 4. This Xiamang clan girl was his daughter, breaking through to become a Yen immortal at just 10,000 years old. This speed left Jian Wushuang speechless. Xiamang Ingxiong, another grandson of Xiamang Yunzhan, furrowed his brow and spoke sternly. "Little sister, this is the ancestral temple. You must show respect." The speaker was quite powerful, at least much stronger than Xiamang Guanyu on the surface. He was already a Tier 3 emperor. He was the eldest grandson of Xiamang Yunzhan. A procession of several hundred people soon arrived at the ancestral temple. It was called an ancestral temple, but it looked more like a shrine. From top to bottom, they paid respects to many spirit tablets. 3 sides of the walls. In the middle were the spirit tablets, and at the top, there was an empty main seat, obviously reserved for someone who had not yet passed away. Further down, many spirit tablets appeared, all belonging to the powerful members of the Xiamang clan. Jian Wushuang quickly spotted the first spirit tablet in the second row. Xiamang Shan Zong Renwang, a Tier 5 emperor, the son of Xiamang. He was the eldest son of the patriarch. In the second row, there were only 3 positions. Yet they were filled with spirit tablets. Obviously, all three sons of the patriarch Xiamang had already passed away. The Xiamang Yunqing line was the direct line and the descendants of Zhong Renwang. One by one, they went forward to burn incense and kowtow. In the upper rows there were also some Dao lords. However, in the end they were all emperors. Patriarch Xiamang had set down a rule that only imperial emperors could enter the clan's memorial tablets. Earth immortals could be recorded in the ancestral temple family records. This was the reason why the Xiamang clan had persisted until now and produced countless powerful individuals. If one couldn't become an emperor, they would die without the honor of meeting their patriarchs in the afterlife. At the very least, after they died, their descendants could still burn incense for them in the ancestral temple. After this group of people paid their respects, hundreds more, including family elders, came following them. Within the imperial city's ancestral clans, there were 100,000 clan members, surpassing the number of Yen immortals by a full 10,000. This extended the ceremony well into the night. Outside the ancestral temple was a small river. On the other side of the river lay an ancient village, the place where the patriarch had lived. Inside the village, paths crisscrossed in a chaotic manner. After traversing the village, they arrived at a small courtyard halfway up the mountain, where everyone stopped. The 74th generation eldest son, Xiamang Yunqing, pays respects to the patriarch. Xiamang Yunqing led the way in kneeling and bowing. Only the old eunuch remained standing, quietly observing everything. The surroundings made Jian Wushuang curious. The ancestral founder of Great Xia, who had established the chaotic ancient country and was once a prince in the mortal world. Why would he live here? After the ceremony, as Jian Wushuang looked back from this vantage point towards the ancestral temple, the view was remarkably broad. Looking at the ancestral temple from this position, the view was very wide. Above the ancestral temple, there was a small mountain, positioned halfway up with a fenced courtyard. Certainly, this place held extraordinary significance for Patriarch Xiamang. Whether it was due to the acquisition or some childhood emotional experiences, the local customs here were evidently mundane, different from the environment within the Great Xia Empire. It was estimated that Patriarch Xiamang had traveled to other countries during his wanderings in the southern regions. Although it was said to be a visit, they didn't actually meet face to face. Xiamang Yunsu turned around, preparing to leave with the others. At this moment, the old eunuch said a few words to Xiamang Yunqing. No one could hear them, only seeing his lips slightly moving. After listening to the old eunuch's words, Xiamang Yunqing first showed confusion, then a hint of shock. Finally, he turned to Xiamang Guanyu, his gaze gentle. Your patriarch said he wants to see you, and he holds you in high regard. You must seize this opportunity. He is the patriarch of our Xiamang clan. Xiamang Yunsu attached great importance to this meeting and gave many instructions. Jian Wushuang was stunned for a moment, suddenly thinking of something. But since he was addressed as a junior, how could he refuse? He quickly transmitted his voice. Imperial Father, rest assured, I know what to do. Watching these people leave, Jian Wushuang revealed a look of despair. He must have been exposed. When Xiamang Yunqing transmitted his voice, Bai Junwang had already informed Jian Wushuang that the Tier 6 Emperor had communicated with him, asking them to gather for a discussion indoors. Don't be afraid. I've already informed Xiamang of your identity. He won't dare to do anything. Bai Junwang was surprisingly calm. If they were to really make a move, Jian Wushuang would be finished, and Bai Junwang would be in trouble as well. He had already passed this matter on to the Divine Spirit. The Transcendent Elder who presided over Tiannan would personally come. It wasn't very far from here. The location of the Great Xia Empire in Tiannan was considered central. It would take about an hour to arrive. The teleportation arrays established by the Kuei organization spread throughout half the region, designed for convenient escape. This was the first time it had saved someone. Without this unwritten rule, in the face of mortal danger, one's own abilities wouldn't suffice, and no one would come to help. However, this time was different. Bai Junwang was the lifeblood of the Divine Spirit. The entire plan for the future depended on Bai Junwang restoring his peak strength. He couldn't afford to fall now. Moreover, Jian Wushuang's life was quite valuable too. It couldn't be easily given up. A Grand Xia Patriarch, a top tier 6 emperor, didn't qualify as a strong opponent. However, if it were the head of the Nalan family, that would be a different story. After all, he was a peak expert, and the other party might not necessarily give face. It wasn't realistic to mobilize more forces either. If the people from the White Tiger Temple were wiped out, the losses would be substantial. Jian Wushuang's palms were sweaty. He could only steel himself and walk in. Trying to calm his own breath, his appearance changed. In front of such strong individuals, continuing to conceal his true face would be disrespectful. After the change in appearance, his aura also surged. The powerful force of all things surged up, surpassing the might of a Tier 3 emperor and reaching the power of a Tier 4 emperor. Letting the other party understand how strong he was. A Dao lord like him, who defied the heavens, was not someone that could be casually killed. In the previous encounter, Long Yi had been quite polite to Hu Qing in front of so many people. Over these days, many strong individuals had personally gone to pay their respects to Hu Qing. The royal family was also desperately trying to win him over, and the crown prince's status was rising. Wu Liang's identity was exposed, but Long Yi's attitude towards him was average, and because of his arrogant personality, even if someone went to visit, he wouldn't meet them. Hu Qing treated everyone equally. I am Junior Jian Wushuang. I'm here to greet Senior Xia Meng. Jian Wushuang was extremely respectful, not even daring to mention Grave God Mountain, fearing that the other party would be unhappy. Mentioning Grave God Mountain would be asserting dominance. If there was a Yen immortal who killed his descendants and acted arrogantly before him, no matter how influential the background, they had to be taught a lesson. A long and cold voice sounded, shaking Jian Wushuang repeatedly backward. His chest felt heavy. A mouthful of scalding hot blood just reached his mouth, only to be swallowed back. He tightly clenched his fists, enduring the invasion of subsequent breaths. His face instantly turned deathly pale, devoid of any trace of color. Come in. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang dared to move slowly, intending to transmit a message to Bai Junwang within, but was interrupted. Inside him, on the fragment of the origin source, Bai Junwang hastily waved his hand, interrupting Jian Wushuang. Since they could detect Bai Junwang within him, they couldn't be underestimated. Transmitting sound at such close range might be noticed by Xia Meng. However, sending a message to the divine spirit by Bai Junwang was extremely discreet. Even peak experts might not detect it. After passing through the golden fence and the small courtyard, Xia Meng, dressed in simple attire, emerged from the thatched house like an old farmer, trembling as he walked. Jian Wushuang dared not look directly and bowed again. Xia Meng walked slowly, his voice hoarse and low. Do you know the arrangement here? Jian Wushuang slowly straightened up, silently shaking his head. Although he searched through some memories of Xiamang Guanyu, his understanding of the Great Xia was not thorough. After all, he was just a prince. If the emperor had probed his soul, he might have known more. This is the home I established when founding the Great Xia. Xianyang's voice became calm, and there was a hint of reminiscence in his eyes. His home at that time was indeed not the magnificent palace of an ordinary dynasty. Jian Wushuang felt helpless. He disliked it when powerful beings reminisced in front of him. Then, in the midst of reminiscence, they subtly conveyed some of their actions to him. Not a bit enjoyable. Xiamang walked to the stone table, sat down alone, poured himself a cup of tea, and then turned his head to glare at Jian Wushuang angrily. Family is the only obsession after obtaining the Tao. Killing my descendants, infiltrating the Great Xia internally, your crime deserves death.